Blog Talk Radio.
Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Ineye Ojira Da, Medine, Ojirafo Kwesi Ra Nehem, Ata Akan, Ojirafo Akwamomai Namarukai Tifimu. That means greetings to all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, meaning African people, black people. Today is Ojira Da. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ra Nehem, Ata Akan, the Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Akwaba, welcome to another edition of Ojira, Purification. And what we do on this show is we deal with our Nanasom Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion or African ancestral religion and how it applies directly to us in our present everyday life activities, our interactions with one another, how it relates to culture, Amamre, and Ama Ancestral nation building and restoration. Before we get started, we have a few announcements and some information that we just wanted to go over real quick. We had a good presentation, a good couple of sessions this past weekend in Hartford, Connecticut. We did a presentation on Saturday, well attended. We were able to give out free copies of one of our softcover books to everybody who came out. We also had the other books available. People purchased books as well, but we were able to give out a free copy of one of our books to everyone. We had a good session, good question and answer session, exchanged a lot of good information. The day after that, we had another session in a different location for people who wanted to come and just connect and discuss different issues. And we basically had a question and answer session dealing with the variety of the subject matter that we deal in our various publications. Again, for those who are new, we have 12 books. We have over 60 research articles. We also have about 49 videos. Most of those are about 2 hours each where we examine our publications. So there's a great deal of information on our website, ojirafo.com, which is ODWIRA, F as in free, O.com, where all of our publications are there. We have the PDF versions of all of our books and publications, as well as the videos, as well as the audio. All are free downloads. The softcover versions of 7 of our books we have available at this point. We will have more coming in the very near future, within the next week or so, as a matter of fact. The 7 books that we have in softcover are available on the website as well. For purchase, they range between $8 and $11. So they're very inexpensive. We print in-house and we print in color from our own printers. So if you would like to purchase those softcover versions, you can do so at the Ojirafo site. I'll put it in the chat room. It's ojirafo.com, ODWIRAFO.com, and the Nhoma page is /Nhoma, NHOMA.html. So we were able to give away free books. We had, the sessions, the second session on the second day, which was Akwesida, which was Sunday. Just that question and answer session. It was a good exchange of information, and there were many, many questions to the extent that it actually lasted about 7 hours. It was a 7-hour question and answer session. People had a lot of experiences, a lot of questions, dealing with ritual, dealing with ancestral communication, dealing with Amamre culture, dealing with Ama Ancestral nation building, restoration, of course, dealing with Nanasom Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion, and the various things associated with that. So we had good sessions in Hartford. We will be coming back to Hartford, Connecticut. We're going to set that up within the next couple of months, so be looking out for that. We also have our presentation. We have it scheduled for Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th, coming up, so that's in 2 weeks. And check the website for detailed information on that as well. And we're also working on some additional dates. So always just continue to check the website as well as our programs, because we will be, sending that information out and posting it as details come available. Just want to send out a quick message right quick, and we'll get going. In the meantime, you can download, go to the website, ojirafo.com if you have not already, And we're going to be looking at ANKH, the origin of the term yoga, our publication, as well as KASA, the origin and nature of the chakra. So you can go to ODWIRA.com. On the introduction page, you can scroll all the way down through the introduction and through the various links. And below the various links, you'll find links to various publications, and you'll find the ANKH article, you'll find the KASA article dealing with the chakra, and also the article ANKH, original terms from Kamit. So those three articles we'll be dealing with tonight to a certain extent with our boy ANKH. So you can download those now. Just want to send out a message right quick just to make sure people know where we're at. So give me 1 second with that. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat at any time. If you are on the phone line and you want to ask a question, just hit number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised, and then we can deal with that. All right, so actually, in the meantime, let me post this real quick. And we just want to make sure that some of the people who weren't sure about the time of the show, I just want to make sure they have that. And in the meantime, we're going to play a portion of the Cuckoo Tune Tune, and then we'll get started. So hold on 1 second with that. For those who are not familiar with the Cuckoo Tune Tune, this is one of our publications that we released in 13,002, which is quote-unquote 2002 in the European calendar. And it deals with cosmology, the foundation of creation, the cosmological structure of creation, the nature and function of the divinities and their relationship to us, the forces in nature, the nature and function of our ancestresses and ancestors, the Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, their relationship to us, their role in our development and in our lives, the Supreme Being, the Great Mother, the Great Father, of course, as well as the fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and so forth, Jesus, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Moses, Muhammad, Yahweh, Allah, all of these fictional characters, Buddha, Brahman, Solomon, Shiva, Menelik. None of these characters exist of any race whatsoever. And we go into detail about that in the Cuckoo Tune Tune. It started off as a 3 CD set. All of the 3 CDs or the MP3 files are on the website. And we also have the transcript, the entire book, the 80-page book, which is a transcript of the entire 3 CD set or all of the MP3 files with additional information as well. So we're going to play a portion of the Cuckoo Tune Tune, and then we're going to get to detailed information. So let's check that out right now.
Ra is the name of the God who is the creator of the world. Raet is the name of the goddess who is the creatress of the world. Ra and Raet are 2 halves of a whole, 2 sides of one coin. That whole, that coin is the great spirit of the Supreme Being. Ra, Raet are the great spirit who brought into being all of creation. They are the divine living energy moving throughout all that exists. Just as solar energy and heat move throughout the earth, the atmosphere of earth, throughout your body, throughout the bodies of plants, animals, minerals, so does the great spirit, Ra, Raet, move throughout, animate, give life to the planet, sun, moon, stars, plants, animals, humans, the black substance of space, all that exists. Fundamentally, the Supreme Being's creative spirit, creative power, is who we call Ra and Raet. Ka is the male name, and Kaet is the female name of the black substance of space. This substance is truly a divine substance. Ka and Kaet are 2 halves of a whole, 2 sides of one coin. That whole, that coin, is the great soul of the Supreme Being. Ka and Kaet together are the great soul who determines the form of all of creation. They consciousness, divine intelligence, operating within all that is created. Just as the tree comes into being and develops according to the design that existed in the seed, so does all of creation come into being, unfold, and take form according to the divine design of the great soul, Ka. Fundamentally, the Supreme Being's creative consciousness, creative intelligence, is who we call Ka and Ka'et. Amen is the great God, the Father of all. Amennet is the great Goddess, the Mother of all. Together, Amen and Amennet are the two halves of the great whole called the Supreme Being. When Amen and Amennet come together, they function as one great being, the Supreme Being. Ra and Ra'et proceed from Amen, Amennet, as the great spirit of Amen, Amennet. They give life to all of creation. Ka and Ka'et proceed from Amen, Amennet, as the great soul of Amen, Amennet. They give form to all of creation. Ra, Ra'et, the great spirit, moves within the black substance, Ka, Ka'et. This is the origin of creation. It is the expansive, contractive movement of the great spirit, Ra, Ra'et, which causes Ka, Ka'et, the black substance, to vibrate and separate into various forms, just as water vibrates, boils, when heat moves through it, creating separate spherical or circular forms, bubbles. So did Ka, Ka'et, the black substance, begin to vibrate according to the movements of the great spirit, Ra, Ra'et, within it. It is because of the expansive, contractive movements of Ra, Ra'et, within Ka, Ka'et, the black substance, and spherical, circular bodies, sun, moon, stars, planetary bodies, earth, separated and were formed within it. These creations are the children of Ra and Ra'et. The Great Spirit invests its divine living energy into its children so that its children may live, so that they may sustain life and produce. As with all of their children, Ra and Ra'et invested their energy into the newly formed planetary body of Earth. The substance of the new planet Earth was a portion of the black substance of space. Because of the movement of Ra and Ra'et within Earth, some of Earth's own black substance became fluid. This new fluid black substance of Earth is known as Mu and Mu, the male and female ocean, another child of Ra, Ra'et. Ra, Ra'et invested their living energy into ocean so that ocean would sustain its own life and produce. As the great spirit, Ra, Ra'et, moved within the substance of Earth, the vibrations caused the black substance beneath ocean to surge outward. This black substance of Earth, which first emerged from beneath ocean, inherited the male name and title Ka, or Ka, and the female name and title Ka'et. The Earth's black substance inherited these two names from the black substance of space, Ka, Ka'et. The earthly Ka, Ka'et, this first black hill or raised land, is another child of Ra, Ra'et. Ra and Ra'et invested their energy into the earthly Ka, Ka'et, and thus the earthly Ka, Ka'et, the primordial or first black hill, is able to sustain life and produce. The earthly Ka, the first black land raised up from beneath Mu, ocean, is the center of Earth. It is the place from which the spirits of the original humans, plants, animals, minerals, first receive their physical earth bodies in order to live, act, and execute their divine function in the world. Just as the great spirit, Ra, Ra'et, caused the black substance of space, Ka, Ka'et, to vibrate and separate into various forms, so did the movement of the great spirit to Earth's first landmass cause separation and development of some of its matter into various physical forms. These physical forms became the flesh within which the spirits of the original humans would enter. Afu means flesh, as in house or place of residence. Your flesh is a house or place of residence for your spirit. You are a spirit, a living energy moving throughout the body. Your spirit gives your body the ability to stand, walk, move, act. When the sperm cell of your father and the ovum cell of your mother united to become one cell, this newly formed physical cell became a place of residence for your spirit, and your spirit entered. 40 weeks later, you were born into the world. occurs, your spirit will leave the physical body. It will no longer reside in that particular house. When Ra'et, moves through matter, matter becomes Afu. Matter becomes the flesh, the house or place of residence of the great spirit. As Ra expands through matter, matter becomes the flesh of Ra. He is thus called Afura. As Ra'et contracts through matter, matter becomes the flesh of Ra'et. She is thus called Afuraet. As Afura invested his energy in the earthly Ka, primordial black hill, the first land to emerge from underneath ocean, the energy of Afura gave life to Ka. This first landmass is thus known under its male name as the Ka of Afura, Afuraka. As Afuraet invested her energy in the earthly Kaet, primordial black hill, the energy of Afuraet gave life to Kaet. This first landmass is thus known under its female name as the Kaet of Afuraet, Afuraitkaitnut, Afuraka. Afuraka is the region of earth where the primordial black hill, Kaet, first emerged from underneath ocean. Eventually, the rest of Earth's landmass would emerge from ocean and separate. Afuraka, Afuraitkai, is the region of earth where the goddesses and gods, the children of the great god and great goddess, Amen and Amennet, first descended and took up residence in nature. Afuraka, Afuraitkai, is the region of the earth mother where our ancestresses and ancestors were born, lived, where they produced, worshipped, created, procreated. It is the place where they died, where their bodies, the first human bodies, were buried. It is the place from which their spirits crossed over into the spirit realm. Afuraka, Afuraikai, is the region of our earth mother where our ancestresses and ancestors were born as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, the people of Afuraka, Afuraikai. It is where the male individual, Afurakani, and the female individual, Afuraitkaitnut, realize this physical and spiritual tie to Amen, Amennet, Afura, Afuraet, the earthly Kaet, the goddesses and gods, the ancestresses and ancestors, where they realize their tie to one another, the animals, plants, minerals, the nature spirit, all of creation. A drop of water is born of ocean. A ray of sunlight is born of sun. A grain of sand is born of earth. Your being is born of the great being, Amen, Amennet. Your spirit is born of the great spirit, Ra'et. Your soul is born of the great soul, Kaet. Your body is born of a greater body, the earthly Kaet. The black energy substance in our organs and our skin, that which gives us our color, is derived of the black substance of space and was inherited through the bodies of our ancestresses and ancestors from the primordial black hill of earth. This black substance, melanin, whose male name is Kanu and female name is Katnu, is an energy substance made by Amen, Amennet to be an instrument capable of receiving and transmitting full divine living energy of the great spirit. It is the substance which allows our physical bodies to function properly as houses, places of residence for Ra'et. Katnu, melanin, is the substance in the bodies of our ancestresses and ancestors, which allows their bodies to become possessed by the spirits of the goddesses and gods during rituals of song, dance, prayer, marriage, copulation, conception. This was an infusion of divine energy into our families. Those of our families who had remained in Afuraka, Afuraitkai, those who had not yet left to populate other parts of earth, are descent from the original Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, the original people of Afuraka, Afuraikai, are descent from those families who remained in Afuraka, Afuraikai, to receive the spirits of the goddesses and gods. Our ability, through Katnu, melanin, to properly receive and transmit the fullness of that divine energy. Our incarnation and reincarnation through these families. It is these things that identify us as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, people of Afuraka, Afuraikai. It does not matter where we go now on earth, where we are born on earth. Our identity is Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut is maintained. We remain Afurakanu,
Michamo, I saw that somebody said they had a problem hearing. Let me know, can you hear me clearly now? Send me a message in the chat room. Let me know if you can hear clearly now. That was a recording of one of the tracks of the Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction. Okay, cool. So what I tried to do was I tried to play the MP3 file directly from the computer into the studio. So, okay, so I'll try it differently next time. All right, so you can download, and I'll post this in the chat. The first document we're going to go through, we're going to examine is ANKH, the origin of the term yoga. And we just posted that in the chat. Anybody who's just listening, ODWIRA.com, just scroll through the index page, the introduction page. Down near the bottom, you'll see a symbol of a large, colorful ANKH. You click on that image, and it'll take you directly to the PDF. Okay. Now, all right, so it says ANKH and also ANKH, which is the Akan term for life. ANKH, of course, is life in ancient Kamit. So we first began to talk about the ritual practices of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, chanting, ancestral communication, ancestral possession, using ritual offerings, foods, sculptures, idols, and so forth, warfare, ritual movements. These are all part of our culture. We've been engaging these ritual practices for thousands of years. The way we move, the way we wield energy, just like someone dances, they wield energy. When you sing, you wield energy. Vibrations, sound vibrations, you can take those sound vibrations and direct them and cause effects. You can affect matter. Somebody can sing to such a pitch that they can break a glass. They can break a solid object like a glass. What are the sound vibrations doing to your tissues? What are they doing to your organs, which are not as, strong per se as glass? Vibrations have an effect on your cells. They have an effect on your body. They have an effect on your energy. They have an effect on your thought processes. So we utilize energy, the movement of energy, sound vibrations, and other kinds of energy, light, colors, geometric forms, patterns in creation, which become matrices by which the abosom, the orisha, the vodou, the ntoru, are magnetically drawn to us and communicate to us. So we have various ritual practices. None of them are purely symbolic. We deal with the specific ritual practices and their functionality in our book, Ubin Sheng, the Ancestral Summons. Whenever we engage in ritual practices, we are operating in a fashion where we are receiving, processing, and transmitting energy or tumi or power in a specified fashion, in a measurable fashion, in a quantifiable fashion. We are never engaged in purely symbolic ritual. If it's symbolic without substance, meaning there's no reception, processing, or transmission of energy, then we do not engage. We don't engage in empty rituals. That is the terrain of the whites and their offspring and the fake religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, and so forth. So we talk about the fact that we've been engaged in ritual practices for thousands of years. For example, libation. Libation is not just a symbolic practice, pouring water into the earth. The first libation, of course, that we experience is the libation of rain. The rainwater is a redistribution of resources. There's evaporation, there's condensation, of course, eventually there's precipitation. So the water that was in the rivers, in the oceans, in the lakes is evaporated, collected in the atmosphere, and then is redistributed to those portions of the dry earth that normally wouldn't receive the benefits of the water. So there's a redistribution, and that redistribution of water helps to nourish the dry earth, replenish the dry earth so that, plant life can be sustained and reemerge. There's energy within the rainwater. the ancestresses and ancestors, when we make our transition, when we die and our spirits leave our bodies, if this body of yours, which is composed of copper and iron and zinc and all the things you find in the earth, if your body, which is a miniature earth, if you're an Afurakanu male or Afuraitkaitnut female only, our bodies are miniature earth. If this miniature earth had the power to attract and fix your spirit for 60, 70, 80 years, when your spirit separates from the body, surely the earth mother has the power to attract and fix and hold your spirit, and that's exactly what happens. So we are connected to our earth mother. So we make our transition. Our miniature earth is buried back into the earth mother and becomes part of the earth mother once again, but our spirits, having separated from our miniature earth, are still under the jurisdiction of Asaase Afua, the earth mother as we call her in the ANKH tradition. There's also, of course, Asaase. So, and they remain connected to this planet. Of course, this is our earth mother until generations down the line when one of our descendants grows up and is ready to have a child, and it is time for us to return as determined by Amenet and Amen, the great mother and great father. Nyame is called in the ANKH tradition, Mawu and Lisa in the Vodun tradition. Then we are sent back into the womb. Spiritually, we are sent back into the womb, take up residence in the zygote. 40 weeks later, we are born back into the world. So that process takes place. While we are ancestresses and ancestors in the spirit realm, we are still under the jurisdiction of the earth mother, so therefore our spirit bodies are still under the quote-unquote gravitational pull of this earth mother. We don't just spring out into the stars, into other galaxies, and never to return. We're still connected to this earth mother. We're still connected to our living relatives who are walking upon the earth mother and still living in the physical realm. So just like you have the physical rain that nourishes and replenishes the dry parts of earth and nourishes the plant life and animal life and mineral life in the dry parts of earth and our living Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut human life, but the mineral life and plant life that is the earth mother and grows up out of the earth mother, the energy operating through that water also stimulates the ancestresses and ancestors who are connected to the earth mother. So just like we take a portion of the water that comes from the rainfall and appropriate a small portion of that rainwater to cleanse ourselves and nourish ourselves and replenish ourselves physically, we also take and appropriate a portion of that rainwater and use that energy that's moving through that rainwater and direct it towards our specific family ancestresses and ancestors through libation. We take a portion of the goddess or abosom of libation, the female abosom of libation, who's called Kamit in ancient Kamit. She releases that water and the energy within the water to nourish the ancestral spirits who are connected to earth through that rainwater. We appropriate a portion of her rainfall and we direct it towards libation for our specific family ancestresses and ancestors, just like we take a portion of that rainfall physically, that rainwater, and we nourish ourselves physically. So there's a specific reason, there's a quantifiable, measurable effect when we deal with libation, when we deal with shrine work, we deal with spirit possession, deity possession, ancestral possession, divination, things that have occurred, things that will occur in the future, how to avoid certain negative things, and so forth. We can deal with this. It's not symbolic, it is direct. So we talk about our ancestral culture in those terms in the beginning of the article to establish that foundation that we have been engaged in ritual practices for thousands and thousands of years. Central to the ritual practices of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut culture and ancestral religion, of course, Anasom, is communication with the Chakra, as we call it in Akan, the Okrawa, the soul, the divine consciousness. In ancient Kamit, the term Ka means soul. The female version is Kaet or Ka. In the Yoruba tradition, as shown in the article, it's the Ori-Inu, the inner Ori, the head. And then Se, or Selido in the Vodun tradition. Your Ka, or your soul, is a deity. It is a personal divinity. It is a force in nature, just like the force in nature that animates the sun, the force in nature that animates the earth, the force in nature that animates the oceans, rivers, atmosphere, and so forth. You also have a force in nature, a deity, that dwells within the head region. It's a divine force in creation that was assigned to you by the Supreme Being before you came into the world. That force in nature dwells with you and guides you in the head region throughout the course of your life. This is, of course, for Afurakanu or Afuraitkaitnut people, African people, black people only. This is what distinguishes us from all other non-black people. We have a Ka, a Kayatman, or Kra, or Krawa, the whites and their offspring, whether it's white Eurasians, Europeans, Asians, Hindus, Arabs, Hispanics, pseudo-Native Americans, and so forth. They don't have that. So that's central. That divinity that dwells within our head region, encoded within that force, is the function we are to execute in the world. Our function, so-called destiny, if we properly refer to it as function. Just like your brain has all the blueprints of how your body is to operate, your organs and organ systems, your cells, how they should come into being, how they should function, how they should interact with one another. Within your spiritual brain, that force that dwells in the head region that you experience as a pull in your head region towards that which is harmonious with order. Any thoughts, intentions, and actions that are out of harmony with order, that force in your head pulls you in another direction. It's always pulling you to do the correct thing, what is in harmony with your function. And also repels you from things that you should not be engaged in, thoughts you shouldn't be engaged in, intentions, and potential behavior, as well as acting out those behaviors. Because it's a divinity, it's an embodiment of divine order. It is a colleague of the other divinities, of the other Aboson, which is the Akan term for divinity, the Orisha, which is the Yoruba term for divinity, the Vodou, which is the Fawn and Ebe term for divinity. Your Kra, your soul, your divine consciousness is a deity. And it's always pulling you to do the right thing because all deities are embodiments of divine order in creation. They are the organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, and they regulate order in creation. So you feel that pull. Spirituality revolves around the Kra, the soul, the divine consciousness, the Okrawa. Everything that you're supposed to do is encoded within your Kra, what functions you are to execute. The Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Ntoru and Ntorotu, the deity, so-called Neteru, Netertu, so vocalized as Ntoru, Ntorotu. The forces in nature, they give us the power, or the Tumi, as we call in our Khan culture, the divine power to execute that function that's encoded within our head, within our spiritual brain. Our Nsamanfo, Nananom Nsamanfo, as we call them in our Khan, our honorable ancestresses and ancestors. The spiritually cultivated class of ancestresses and ancestors. Not just any ancestor or ancestress, but the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, those who mastered life and lived in harmony with divine order, and now have the responsibility given to them by the Supreme Being to assist us in guidance with regard to spirituality. That class of ancestresses and ancestors, they give us guidance on how to use the power we are given to execute our function in the world without creating disorder in the world in the process. So the Aboson, the deities, the forces in nature, they give us the power to execute. The Nananom Nsamanfo, the honorable ancestresses and ancestors, and of course they're only Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, African black ancestresses and ancestors who are honorable. They give us the guidance on how to use that power to execute our function harmoniously without creating disorder within ourselves or the world or our community in the process. But they both only guide us based on what's in our own Kra. So our Kra is like the apex of a ahinasa, a triangle. The bottom right-hand corner is the deities, the bottom left-hand corner is the ancestresses and ancestors. They support, as the base of the ahinasa, the triangle, what's in the apex, what's in the spiritual brain, what's in the Kra. They give us the power and the guidance to accept and harmonize with what's in our Kra. That is the central theme of spirituality. How to align with your thoughts, intentions, and actions with what's in your Kra, within your spiritual brain. And if you get off track and make mistakes and engage in disordered behavior, disordered thoughts, with disordered intentions and actions, we engage in ritual processes to realign ourselves with divine order. So Nanasom or Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion, meaning African ancestral religion or African traditional religion or African ancestral spirituality or African traditional spirituality, the term we use to represent that is Nanasom. Whether it's Akan, Yoruba, Ebe, Bakongo, Swana, Lobi, Chokwe, Maasai, expressions of ancient Kamit and Kanit, Egypt and Nubia and so forth, ancestral religion of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, African people, we use the term Nanasom as a catch-all term to represent that. Nanasom or Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion is defined in essence as the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need in order to harmonize with divine order. And through ritual, we reject disorder when imbalance occurs. When imbalance occurs as a result of disorder, we engage in ritual processes to reject disorder so we can remove the imbalance from our lives and restore balance to our lives. So we incorporate law through ritual, and we restore balance through ritual. That's the essence of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion, or African ancestral religion. It is rooted in what is in the crop, what is in your divine consciousness, your soul, what is your function to execute in the world. Are you an immune system cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being? If you are, you're going to be naturally inclined towards restoring order where disorder occurs, whether that's in a warrior or a military aspect, or if it's in a healing aspect. If there's disorder that manifests in the bodies of your family and people in your community, the immune system cell within the family, which may be you, you'll be naturally inclined towards restoring order to that disease. So you'll be naturally inclined when you're growing up to execute that function, just like your immune system cells are naturally inclined to be drawn to cancerous cells to destroy them and expel them from the body. You, as an immune system cell within the great divine body, that's your function. So you'll be naturally inclined towards behaviors, thoughts, intentions, and behaviors that will allow you to restore order in the bodies of your people when disorder manifests. So when disease manifests, you'll be drawn to plants, minerals, and various practices that can restore order where disorder appears, because that's your function. We have different functions. They're all encoded within our crop. Whatever your function is, the abosom will support you and give you the power to execute the function. If you're a healer, they'll give you the kind of power you need to heal. If you're a protector, they give you the kind of power, fiery power necessary to protect. If you're a builder, they'll give you the kind of energy you need to develop that kind of skill and engage that process. The ancestresses and ancestors will give you the guidance on how to utilize that power based on your genetic makeup, so that you don't create disorder within yourself or the community as you're wielding that power. Everybody can have access to the energy of the sun, but some people have to take it in differently than others. Everybody needs oxygen, everybody needs certain vitamins and minerals, but some groups, because we migrated to certain regions, some people migrated to a mountainous region. Some people migrated to riverine areas. Some people migrated to desert areas. Some people migrated to forest areas. Some people migrated to savanna areas. They took in the food as well as took on the nuances of the nature spirits in those areas and incorporated the foods and incorporated the energy of those regions. That became part of their cells. When they gave birth to children, those children vibrated at the frequency of that region. So they would have dietary taboos in the savanna region that people in the mountainous region may not have. They would have social taboos in a riverine area where people in the desert area they may not have. Times to draw water, times to cultivate, times to move, to engage in nomadic activity based on your ancestry. What has happened thousands of years, we have different ways to approach the same spirits in nature and incorporate their energy and utilize it for our benefit to support our function based on what has happened to us ancestrally. Only our ancestresses and ancestors who mastered life in these blood circles know how to master life in these blood circles, know how to use the energy of the abosom in our blood circle. So they give the guidance on how to utilize the energy we've been given in a harmonious fashion. So this is all part of our culture. This is central to our culture. Central to the practice, as we say, of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people is communication with Chakra, the abosom, the divinities, the ancestresses and ancestors, at an enkombre, at a shrine. So there are abosom kombre, there are shrines to the divinities. There are in some enkombre shrines to the ancestresses and ancestors. And as we said in the article, sacred places where we go to communicate with the spirits of our ancestresses and ancestors and the forces in nature. And we talk about a little bit about shrines. Now, when you have an ancestral shrine and you evoke your ancestresses and ancestors, or you have a shrine to a divinity, whether it is your Kra, your Okrawa, or another force in nature, and you go and invoke that force in nature for libation or engage in ritual prayer to invoke or call that force in nature to come take up residence at the shrine, you're giving, you can communicate with the forces of nature anywhere. You can communicate with your ancestresses and ancestors anywhere. You can communicate with your Kra, the force dwelling with your head, within your head region, of course, anywhere. But you take out time, set out specific time, which is why we use the term enkombre. Enkom means spiritual communication. Bede means time. Bede also means manner. Bede also means a space or a place. So enkombre means a spiritual communication. Bede, time. Bede, place, and bede, manner. We engage spiritual communication in a specific manner, at a specific time, and in a specific space. If somebody came to your house and was in the living room and you were in the kitchen, you could yell back and forth and have a conversation. But it will make more sense to go into the room with the person, sit down, focus, and have a mutual exchange that's more beneficial and harmonious. You can hear them, but you can also see them. You can also feel their energy. The ancestresses and ancestors are spirits. We are spirits operating through a physical body. So when we give them a physical space to take up residence in temporarily, when we engage in communication, now they're spiritual forces operating through a physical space, a shrine, or a sculpture on a shrine. And so therefore we have a full spiritual and physical interaction or exchange, and it's a full harmonious interaction. So we set aside specific time so we can focus only on that interaction, get realigned, get focused, get answers to specific questions and things that we need to get answers to, so that we can move forward through the course of the day and engage in harmonious interaction. We establish shrines to the abosom, shrines to the Nsamanfo. Now, when we have a shrine, we invoke the abosom, evoke the ancestresses and ancestors, and then we sit down after we call them forth and they come forth. Their energy is there. Some people are clairvoyant, they can see the ancestresses and ancestors. Some people are clairaudient, they can hear them. Some people are clairsentient, they can feel them. Some people are clairalient, they can smell the energy when they move. They may not be able to see them or hear them, but when the different forces in nature come forward, they give off a certain, not only their own ritual colors as they move through space and generate certain colors based on their movement through space, and those are their sacred colors. They also generate their own name. They also generate their own aroma by moving through space. Just like flowers and everything else gives off their own vibration, which manifests as an aroma, a scent, and so forth. The sense that are sacred to the divinities are based on their movement through space. Their movement through the black substance of space and within the atmosphere of Earth. Their names are based on the movement through space, and they move in a fiery fashion. They generate a collection of vibrations. When you repeat those collection of vibrations with your vocal cords, you have enunciated the actual name of the divinity. But we do not name the divinity. As they move through creation, and we hear those sound vibrations, we can actually hear the names that are emanating from them. The same with yourself. The energy moving through your form is unique to you. No other form exists that looks exactly like yours unless you have an identical twin. So just like when you breathe through it or blow through an instrument, you blow through a trumpet, it gives off a certain collection of sound vibrations. You blow through a tuba, a different collection of sound vibrations. Blow through a trombone, a different set of sound vibrations. The same air coming from the same source, but because the forms are different, the sounds emerging from them are different. The life force energy is circulating through your unique form. It gives off or emanates a specific collection of vibrations that are unique to your form. If you can attune to those sound vibrations with your spiritual ear, you can hear your actual name that is emanating from you. And that's the name that we take on. So our names are a reflection of who we actually are. The names of the Abosom, like Ra and Raed and KANKH and Asaase Afua, Heru, and so forth, these are the names that, the sound vibrations that emanate from them as they move through creation. We attune to them, we repeat those names, and we're actually invoking them literally. So when the Abosom, when we evoke them through ritual prayer at the shrines and they come forward and take up residence, and we can either feel them or smell them or see them or hear them, or clear gustance, which is different tastes that we can experience, or clear timians, as we call it, where there's a shift in the time continuum when they move forward, when the spirit moves through the room and we can feel them, or clear equilibrance, where there's a shift in our capacity to maintain our balance. We become imbalanced or wobbly or even dizzy sometimes when that energy moves through the space and moves through us. And there's a communication there. There's an exchange there. There's different ways that people experience the forces in nature and the ancestresses and ancestors. When they come forward, sometimes when we're sitting there, just like when someone dances and a specific Abosom possesses, then their dance changes. If it's a fiery warrior type Abosom or warrioress, then the dance is much faster. It's more precise, jerky, hard, powerful. If it's a cool, healing divinity, the movements change. The energy makes them change. That force of nature operating them makes them move differently. They move in a slower fashion. Maybe move in a more smooth and delicate fashion. You can tell which Abosom has come forward based on their dance movements. They have their own rhythms. They have their own timing. They have their own dance movements as well as their own ritual colors and smells and so forth. So just like that happens with dance, it also happens even when we're not dancing, but when we're sitting in front of a shrine. When the Abosom comes forward, it affects us in a specific manner. It's like you may need to raise your arms when you're dancing to receive the energy of the sun, or you may put your arms in a certain position when you're receiving the energy of Asaase Afua, the Earth Mother. When a certain Abosom comes forward, you may shift positions. They will cause you to shift positions as you're sitting in front of their shrine to receive their energy in an optimal fashion. This has always been the case. This is an effect of dealing with the Abosom, dealing with the Nananoma and Samanfo. So that shift in position is simply to receive their energy optimally. It's instinctive. Based on when they come forward, then we respond naturally. Now, when the whites and their offspring later invade ancient Kamit, they observed these ritual practices, not only ritual song and ritual dance and instruments and so forth, but they also observed people sitting in front of shrines and then shifting positions for a reason the whites and their offspring had no understanding of. We show in the text the common meditative posture of the deities that we learn from the deities. You see Ra sitting in the common meditative posture with the Ankh, holding the Ankh near the knee region. You see Tahuti, we show also Heru called Cheche in ancient Kamit, in our Khan culture, Ma'at called Mara in our Khan, Tahuti called Brechini Hunuate in our Khan, Ra, who's called Nyokompon in our Khan, same divinities in these meditative postures. And we show that in, what is that, page 2 in the article. Okay, and they're holding the talisman of life. They're holding the Ankh. Okay, so the Ankh literally means life. That term means life, Ankh, in ancient Kamit. In the Coptic dialect, it's spelled and pronounced Ankh. So when referring to an individual, as we say in the article, it means a life, like a human life. It's a talisman in the form of an Ankh. It's used to wield the energy of life in order to enliven or awaken the innate or pure energy and awareness of the individual. We show Anpu and Abosom placing the Ankh to the nose of the deceased individual to enliven the spirit of the deceased individual. So when the spirit leaves the body, you have the spirit body, the Sahu, but the Ka and the Ba should be connected within the body. The Ka is your soul, your divine consciousness, is a force, is a divinity that dwells with you. If you live in harmony with order, your Ka will stay connected with you. If you get out of harmony with order, you repel your ka or your kayat. If you're in harmony with order, your ba, called bara or obra in Akan, that life energy will dwell with you, and there'll be a union of the ba and the ka, or the bra and the kra, as we say in Akan. And that union of the ba and the ka creates the ak, the illuminated ancestral spirit. You become an illuminated ancestral spirit when you can align your spirit and your soul. The divine energy you've been given by the Supreme Being and your consciousness. When you can align that properly, then you become an ancestral spirit that's spiritually cultivated. And it's just it's a demonstration that you had engaged that process through life. Because you engaged that process through life and lived in harmony with order through life and stayed in alignment with divine order through life, and your spirit and your soul were always aligned once you got to a certain level of development, and you were consistent with that, then when you made your transition into the ancestral realm, you still are able to align your spirit, your divine living energy, with your ka, with your soul, your divine consciousness. And because you can do that, then you become an ancestral spirit who is cultivated, an honorable ancestral spirit. One of the aku, or akutu, in ancient Kamit, which they call the illuminated ones, but honorable ancestresses and ancestors. We have ancestresses and ancestors who were nice people who died. They weren't necessarily spiritually cultivated, but they were just nice people. They are still developing themselves in the ancestral community. But those who actually mastered life while they were still on earth, they became honorable elders and eldresses. Those are, in Akan, nananom mpanyifo. Those elders and eldresses who have mastered life, who were spiritually cultivated, whose thoughts, intentions, and actions were in harmony with divine order. When they make their transition, they're not just an average ancestress or ancestor hanging around spiritually. They are endowed by the Supreme Being with the responsibility and the capacity to assist us in our spiritual development. They are assigned to us because they have the capacity to help give us right guidance, divine guidance, orderly guidance. They become illuminated ones, or akutu. Those, and all that means, illuminated ones, simply means they were able to keep their ba and their ka in alignment. The divine living energy that animates us and the divine consciousness that guides us. They were able to align that. If you can't align that throughout the course of your life, you feel disjointed, you feel disordered, you make bad decisions, your energy is low, you're not in a state of good health on a regular basis. You make the kind of decisions that create disorder in your life and the lives of other people. You're not learning from your mistakes and so forth. But when you align with the divine living energy that animates you, and you therefore have the capacity to access the energy of the forces in nature harmoniously and make good decisions and execute your function in the world, and if you're a healer, you engage that healing function and you benefit your community. If you're a protector, you engage that function and you benefit the community. If you're a builder, you engage that function and you protect, you build within the community, and everything benefits the community. When you can engage that process because you've aligned your ba with your ka, then you become an honorable elder, honorable elderism. You make your transition, you become an honorable ancestor, honorable ancestress, called aku and akutu in ancient Kamit. So when you see the divinity placing the ankh to the nose of the deceased person, that ankh pulls together the ba and the ka. And if the person that pulled that together in life, that process will replenish itself after death, and the ba and the ka will reunite within the spirit body just like it aligned itself in the physical body. And you'll, just like in the physical world, that person, when they align their energy and their consciousness and made good decisions on a regular basis, when they died and they just have a spirit body now, they still can align their energy and their consciousness in a harmonious fashion. And putting that ankh through the nose tests that. If you were able to do that during your lifetime, when that ankh is placed through the nose by the divinity, then the ba and the ka unite. You become an ak. You become an ancestor or ancestress who's illuminated, harmonious, honorable elder and honorable elderess. So you see the divinity placing the ankh, the loop near the nose. If you have an ankh and you're sending that energy through the loop and it's circulating through that loop, it creates an electromagnetic field. People can even do that if you get some copper and you create it in the form of an ANKH and attach the two ends to a battery, that loop will become an electromagnetic field where you can pick up paper clips and things like that. And that's just attached to a battery. That talisman using the hand of a divinity, showing a force in nature, utilizing that talisman to send their energy through that loop, constantly circulating to enliven and empower and awaken the consciousness of that individual. This is what's going on. So we show that with Anpu. We show it with Ptah. He's anking, quote unquote, the king, the Ter'a, the corrupt Pharaoh, Ter'a Sen Ursuret, wielding Ankh on his chest, receiving the energy of the Abosom and so forth. So that's the foundation. We're just showing the foundation of how we utilize the Ankh. What is the Ankh for? It's a talisman of life. And it's functional. It's not symbolic. When Afuraitkaitnut people sit at an Nkomre shrine, we are always engaged in the process of invoking or evoking our Akra, the Abosom, and or the Nananom and Samafa, in order to harmonize ourselves with Inyamewa, Inyame, and Sheshe, simply meaning Amenet and Amen share the divine order. Now we get into what happened to that whole process. Whites and their offspring learned of religion and ritual practice after infiltrating and settling in certain parts of the continent, observing our people. Of course, they waged war. It took them thousands of years to finally take over certain parts of the continent. After losing many wars over thousands of years, they began to try to corrupt the ancestral religious tradition. That took them thousands of years as well to get to the point where we are now, where we have Christianity and Islam and Hebrewism and all these faith traditions, right? The difference between the whites and their offspring is they have no Akra, they have no ANKH, they have no ODWIRA, they don't have a divinity that dwells within them. They are spirits of disorder based on their behavior that caused them to become that. They didn't just lose their melanin simply because they moved into a cold climate. That is part of the physical, mechanical process of what took place. But the reason they were in that cold environment and exiled, expelled from the larger Afuraitkaitnut communities because of their behavior, their disordered, perverse behavior. Dissexuality, rape, incest, murder, all these kinds of perverse activities. When you engage in that in a community, in our traditional communities, we would kill people who would engage in these perverse actions. Some had escaped the consequences and were drawn up into northern Eurasia. Those are the people who got caught up in the Ice Age. Those are the people who lost their melanin content. Those are the people, of course, prior to losing the melanin content, they lost their Kra just because of the behavior that they chose to engage in, which repelled their Kra. When you engage in disordered behavior, you repel your divine consciousness. If you continue in that kind of behavior, it will depart from you for good and return to Amen and Amenet and dissolve within the great divine Mother and Father. It's like a drop of water returning to the ocean. You would never see that drop of water again. The force in nature, that divinity that dwells within the head region, if you engage in perverse behavior, that deity will disconnect itself from your head region. It's a force in nature. It will return to the Supreme Being. So if somebody is engaged in rape and child molestation and abuse and all these kinds of things, the force in nature, which is a deity, will not dwell in disorder. It will detach itself. And the person now will be a spirit without an anchor in divine order. They will be a spirit of disorder now. Their behavior will manifest that disorder. Eventually their physical characteristics will be a reflection of that disorder. This is the origin of the whites and their offspring. And the difference between us and them, physically, of course, is a lack of melanin content and their morphological characteristics, their phenotypical characteristics, but the primary identity, the difference in identity, they don't have the Ka and Kayat and we do. So because they don't have that spiritual organ which is needed to communicate with the Supreme Being, the forces in nature, the ancestresses and ancestors, and this is true of all of them, they don't have the capacity to do that. So they could watch and observe things we were doing ritually, but they can't do what we're doing ritually. Whenever we're sitting in front of a shrine, we're communicating with our Kra, communicating with the deities, communicating with the ancestresses and ancestors. They can sit in front of a shrine they can't communicate with any of that. They can't communicate with the Supreme Being because they don't have a crop. And, of course, they can't communicate with the forces of nature because those are divinities as well, and they don't have that connection. They can't communicate with any honorable ancestresses and ancestors because they don't have any. All they have is corrupt ancestresses and ancestors. The only spirits they can communicate is their deceased, criminal, white ancestresses and ancestors, fundamentally. And the only black deceased spirits that they could communicate with are those who are criminal, those who are wayward, those who are depressed, those who are in disorder themselves. Just like a criminal black person can connect with a criminal white person. But if a black person is sensible in harmony with order, they're repulsed by the whites in their offspring physically. They make their transition. Their spirits will never go in anywhere near one of the whites in their offspring. Whether the whites in our offspring painted a picture of a black person and prayed to them all night and tried to pray to their spirit, we will never respond to them, ever. And the deities never have and they never will. So the whites in their offspring, they observed us engaged in ritual practices. They would see us shifting position as we were sitting in front of the shrine. So they would begin to shift positions when they sat in front of a shrine in imitation, and created a discipline out of shifting positions or sitting in postures, communicating with absolutely nothing, a discipline of nothing, while we were engaged in a process of communication. So this is the origin of their pseudo-practice of yoga. It's foolishness. So let us get into the actual etymology of the term, and then we're going to get into the practice, and to show that it's not actually a discipline, it's a totally different definition and orientation. And then we're going to get into the whole piece dealing with chakras. Now, okay, and if anybody has any questions, just either you can type them in the chat room. If you want to communicate in the chat room, of course, you do have to have an account, which you can sign up for very quickly to get a username. Or if you are on the phone, just hit number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised, and then we can answer your question. So the term Ankh, we show the Medusa, the hieroglyphs for the term Ankh here, and we show that Ankh in Akan is Onkwa in Akan. Of course, the Akan people migrated from ancient Kanat, Nubia, to the western part of the continent. A couple of thousand years ago, they reestablished the ancient Kanat or Nubian Empire. Kanat is a title for ancient Nubia, an ancient title for the region called Nubia, Sudan, South Sudan now. In the Medusa and the hieroglyphs, you'll see it spelled Kanat, meaning the first land, the land, the front land, the land of the south, the land of the beginning, and so forth. We migrated to the western part of the continent and reestablished the ancient empire, civilization of Kanat, which later became known as Ganat or Ghana, Akana civilization. After Muslim invasions 1,000 years later, we began to migrate south from that region and reestablish Akana or Akan civilization in what is now called Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and the Republic of Ghana. There are about 20 million Akan people collectively in those two countries. And millions of us over hundreds of years were taken from that region and brought to North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuaketi, or the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. So many of us ended up in North America, South America, and so forth. So there are many Akan people in the Western Hemisphere because of that process. So there's a direct migratory pattern. We also show the direct linguistic pattern that follows that same structure, as well as genetic, as well as ritual, dealing with the deities that the Akan people still worship, the same deities from ancient Kanat and Kamit, ancient Nubia and Egypt, by the same name, same ritual practices, same sacred colors, and so forth. Ankh is a manifestation of that. Ankh or Anku, Ankha in ancient Kamit is Onkwa in Akan, which also means life. And so we show the Ankh itself, and then we show the well-known Akua Badal. The Akua is in the same shape of an Ankh because this is an Akan cultural artifact. These dolls are given to young women. They're given to little girls. They are fertility talismans. If a woman, for example, is having a problem having a child, you'll go to an okomfo, a priest or priestess, obosomfo, priest or priestess, or dunsinifo sometimes, herbalist or whatever. There will be an akua will be carved for them, will be ritually prepared and fed and so forth. They'll be given that akua doll. They will tie it to their back just like a baby, and they will carry it around. They will take care of it just like a baby. The energy moving through that structure and the spirit moving through that structure. In fact, the divinity Nana Akua was called Nebuchadnezzar in ancient Kamit. She's the wife of Set. She's Akua, the wife of Awuku and Akan. She's Agberu, the wife of Eshu in the Yoruba tradition. She's Koni Koni, the wife of Legba in the Vodun tradition. She's the one who governs this. She's called Akua Ba. This doll is a child of Akua. Akua Ba, Ba means child. She's the one who stimulates that fertility. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar at first was not able to have children. They'll say she was barren, and later on she was able to have children. Akua, in the Akan tradition, they say the woman, Akua, at first was not able to have children, and later on she was able to have children. So they use this Akua doll to stimulate fertility. However, Akua divinity dolls are also used in funerary practices. They're also used for the deceased, to stimulate the energy of the deceased so we can put out food offerings for the deceased. They draw the energy of the deceased to help them realign, recognize their new condition as ancestresses and ancestors, and help them make a smooth transition from dying from the physical world so they won't get caught up earthbound and hanging around causing problems for people in the community, to make a smooth transition from the physical world to the ancestral community, get grounded in the ancestral community so that they can function and develop in the ancestral community. So these akua or unkwa sculptures are used in the funerary context to enliven or strengthen the spirits of those who have made the transition. They're also used for people who are going to be having children. Just like the ankh we just showed above with the deity enlivening the person, the deceased spirit, but also you will see the deities putting the ankhs to the nose of the living people to give them strength, give them energy, to imbue them with the energy of the deity who is holding the ankh. So just like in ancient Kamit, the ankh is used to enliven the living person and help them stimulate the alignment of their Ba and Ka, their spirit and soul, also used for the deceased to replenish that alignment of the Ba and Ka. That's the ankh used in ancient Kamit. For those two processes, the same exact two functions in our Akan culture with the akua, which is in the exact same shape of the ankh, for fertility, for the living, stimulating the living energy of the living with regard to reproduction, but also in a funerary context. So we go through that in the article to show that information. Now, when you look at the word itself, the etymology of the word, it's spelled in ancient Kamit with the wavy symbol for the letter N, the symbol, the nasal symbol, and then you also have the dark circle, which is the K symbol. We show that the A can also be spelled in Coptic with the EI or the I. So, for example, the or M word for M becomes EM or EMI. In Coptic, you find the word for At becomes Yat in Coptic. We also have in Akan, the A can also be a Ya sound. So the term Afunu in Akan or Afuru, meaning belly or inner abdomen, is also pronounced and written Yafunu, depending upon the dialect. So the A in Afunu becomes Afunu or Yafunu, just like the M or At in ancient Kamit becomes At or Yat. The same thing happens with the term Ankh. The A can be a Ah, but it can also be an E. So Ankh becomes Ankh or Eankh. E and Ankh becomes Eankh. This is where you pronunciation of ANKH. The whites and their offspring pronounce Iyonk or Yonk. This is why in proto-indo-european the term Yonk or Yun, later becoming Yoke, is where they get the term from. They'll say that the term Yonk or Yunek in proto-indo-european is where you get the English term yoke. The Sanskrit term yuj. These are all, the root they would say is the origin of the term yoga. Yoga coming from yoke meaning to yoke, to unite or to link. Yoke being rooted in the proto-European term yonk, where yonk comes from yonk or ankh from ancient Kamit. Now, it's not just linguistic gymnastics that we're dealing with. We show, historically, the Sanskrit word yoga has the literal meaning of yoke from a root yuj or yunk, to join, to unite, or to attach as a term for a system of abstract meditation or mental abstraction. It was introduced by Patanjali in the 2nd century BC. Now, we quote that, and we also show the infix, which is a vowel morpheme that interrupts the morpheme, so we show the relationship between the proto-indo-european root yuk or yuch or yunk, and when they add the ne or the n as an infix, yunk becomes yunek or yunk. That's where you get, this is what they got the yunk from the unk or aunk or ankh in ancient Kamit. That's linguistic. We show that, but let us show why. Why does the whites and their offspring take a term that means to yoke or to unite or to link? What does that have to do with spirituality? And if it came from the term ankh, we can show that linguistically with regard to the sounds and so forth, but does it exist cosmologically to prove it? It's one thing to hear it linguistically, but and say this is what it means, but the cosmology of the culture shows why does it mean that. The whites and their offspring wouldn't know why the term yonk or ankh has something to do with the linking or yoking. So now we go to the actual medutu, the hieroglyphics that spell out the term ankh, and now we find the actual link to the word yoke, literally. So if you go to page of the document, we show a couple of variations of the spelling of the term ankh. You have the symbol of the actual symbol of the ankh, then you have the wavy line for the N, the symbol, the dark circle for the KH symbol, so it's or ink, which is, of course, nuke in proto-indo-european, yuk and yunk. Of course, we did the sound connections there, a living being, a life, ankh. But then you have the second version. It's a symbol of an ankh, but then it's also, it's a goat, a small domesticated animal, a small cattle, meaning it's a life, an animated life, literally, an animal life or an animated life, animation. But if you look around the neck of the animal, and this is the word ankh, one word ankh, it shows the determinative of a man in a meditative posture, on his knees in a meditative posture, one of the traditional meditative postures. But then another version of the word ankh shows the symbol of the ankh, but it also shows the symbol of the goat with an ankh around its neck. But the ankh around its neck is in the form of a yoke. Now you have the union between yoke and ankh. This is why ankh and yoke is the same word. But we go further. We also have the same term sa or sahu, meaning the spirit body. So in ancient Kamit, sahu means the spirit body. And akan is the sum, the spirit body. So we show that, we show the medutu for that, the form of a man that exists in heaven. This is their interpretation, but it's actually the spirit body, and so forth. And they show various forms of the way it is written. One of the forms actually includes both determinatives that are also shown in the word ankh. So you have the S, the symbol for the S, the symbol for the A, and the symbol for the H, sa, or sahu. But then the determinative symbol is the man in the meditative posture on his knees, and then the animal with the yoke around its neck, but it's actually an ankh around its neck. And this is the term for spirit body. So you have the SAH, and then you have those two symbols. The ankh around the neck is the yonk around the neck of the animal, the yoke around the neck. So that's why we say the determinants here are the goat and the seated elder or elderess, shrouded, denoting purity, seated in one of our common meditative postures. The goat and the shrouded figure are also determinatives and variations of the term ankh. So we say, notice that in the term ankh, with the determinative of the goat, the animal has an ankh around its neck. Ankh around its neck became known and pronounced as a yonk, munek, or yoke, yuke, around its neck. The animal has the ankh or yonk or yoke around its neck. Ankh and yoke are the same word and the same symbol from ancient Kamit. And that's why we say this is why the whites and their offspring, when stealing or co-opting the term ankh, recognize it to represent yoking in some form. However, there's more to the association, which is rooted in our cosmology. We must understand that the Sahu is spirit body to understand the cosmological connection. So we have the ankh around the animal to represent the term ankh, or life, but it's also part of the symbol for the Sahu, the spirit body. So what you're yoking is the spirit body. Like we said before, you're yoking actually the Ba and Ka within the spirit body. When you can invoke or yoke or unite or link the Ba and Ka within the spirit body, now you've done that through life. You become an honorable elder or elderess, and then when you make your transition, you become one of the Nananom and Samafo. So this is why we say when we link or relink our spirits to our soul, we have realigned ourselves with divine order. We have thereby purified our thoughts, intentions, and actions, which is prerequisite for our harmonious functioning in the world. The Abosom and Nananom and Samafo are key to this realignment and purification, for they utilize the ankh, the yoke, or the key of life, to imbue us with purificatory, life-giving energy when we communicate with them. So we show an image of a person standing before Tahuti. Tahuti has the ankh. Since he's holding the ankh, his energy is flowing through that talisman, through that loop, and imbuing the person with the energy of that, him as an abosom. That person receives that energy, provokes that energy, and receives it, and then he can harmonize with that divine force in nature for recalibration, purification, and communication with divine wisdom. So this is why the goat with the ankh around on its neck is a medut for the term ankh, as well as the term Sahu, or spirit body. It's the reason why the shrouded figure, meaning the purified figure, the mummified figure, the figure that's impervious to decay, purified, mummified, is a medut for the term ankh as well, a determinative for the term ankh, as well as the term spirit body. For it is our meditation at the shrine which leads to invocation and evocation of the Abosom and Samafo for ritual realignment and life purification. So that's the connection. Ankh is the origin of the term yoga or yoke or yonk, but ankh is not a discipline. Now this is a key piece here. So we talked about the origin of the term ankh. People will say, well, yoga is a discipline. They have a series of postures. In reality, if you look at the various postures, when you look at the earlier texts, they don't mention postures at all. You get closer and closer, centuries later, they start talking about a handful of postures. These various postures that most people know about, there's been information that's been released over the past few years that shows that when the British went into India in the 19th century and started teaching British gymnastics and British military-style exercises, those various exercises, the Hindus, the Aryan Hindus, began to imitate, and those became the yogic postures that the vast majority of people who practice Hatha yoga use today, that are rooted in 19th century British gymnastics. That's all they're doing is gymnastics. That's it. Overlaid with a pseudo-cosmology, spiritual dogma, based on a lack of the capacity to communicate with any force in nature. So they created an entire discipline around communicating with nothing because they have no capacity to do so. So trying to escape the cycle of reincarnation, meditating upon the formless, this is pure foolishness. This is what in the East, the whites and their offspring are trying to escape the cycle of reincarnation, trying to escape the earth. In the West, they have the same concept with Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. They just couch it in the terms of trying to escape the cycle of incarnation or life, meaning they're trying to get to heaven. They're trying to escape the physical world, and that's heaven for them. In the East, they're trying to escape the cycle of reincarnation. That's heaven or bliss or nirvana for them. Of course, that would be part of their pseudo-cosmology because Earth is held for them, whether it was in the glacial period or in the melanin recessive perverse bodies that they operate through. Those spirits of disorder, those disharmonious perverse bodies. The world is hostile to them because they're out of harmony with everything in the world, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, human life. So they're trying to escape the world. And that's woven into their pseudo-religious dogma. Our people are not trying to escape the world. That's not part of our culture. The Earth Mother is our mother. It's a blessing to be on the Earth Mother, to live in harmony with the Abosom, to function in connection with the Abosom, whether we're in the physical world or in the ancestral realm. It's all good for us. We're here for a specific reason. We have a specific purpose or function to execute in the world. The whites and their offspring don't have a cross, so they don't have a function. Cancerous cells don't have a divinely allotted function. They used to be normal cells, but then they became disfigured, and now they lost their function. Now all they do is malfunction. They're at odds with the other cells in the body, so they're slated for destruction. That's a divine response. We have a function as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people. Plant life, animal life, mineral life has a function that's to execute in creation. The whites and their offspring are cancerous cells in divine body. They don't have a function. So they're at odds with everything in the created natural universe. So they're trying to escape the world. That's their foolishness. That has nothing to do with us. The world is a harmonious, divine place for us. The world is a place that they want to get away from. So, of course, they weave that into their pseudo-culture. Now, this is why they try to meditate on the formless, escape the cycle of reincarnation and all that nonsense. Now, and we mentioned that on page 9. So what they end up doing is engaging in empty ritual. That's all they have access to. They don't have a cross, we said, and so forth. So we go into a little bit more detail with regard to that. With regard to us, as we said previously, we're guided by the Abosom and Insamafo and our proud to sit and listen at the Nkombre. We listen to the Abosom, we get guidance from them so we can harmonize with what's in our head, in our spiritual head, in our pride. We get power from the Abosom. So we sit at the shrine to get that power and learn how to expand and contract that power. Learn from the Abosom. We don't only get the power from them, it's not only dispensed from them, but we also are given the capacity of how to expand and contract, turn the power on and turn the power off. If you're infused with fiery power, how to open that fiery power and utilize it, how to wield it, how to shut it down when you need to shut it down. You're given the power and how to use the power. Within Nananolim Samaf of the ancestresses and ancestors, the manner in which you use the power as you relate to plant life, as you relate to animal life, as you relate to mineral life, as you relate to other Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, and as you socially interact with them, how do you utilize the power in a harmonious fashion to execute your function without creating disorder with them in the process? So only the Nsamafo can show that. So we evoke them to learn that. We invoke the Abosom to learn that at the shrine. When the Abosom come forward to teach us, and their energy, there's a shift in energy. Maybe a cool energy comes, and then a magnetic, fiery, powerful energy comes. Our bodies shift, no different than when we're dancing, and a different rhythm comes through, and then we shift the movement. When we're sitting in front of the shrine, we shift, and it's instinctive. We don't sit around practicing postures in front of the shrine. That would be nonsense. It has nothing to do with ankh, or yonk, or yoking, or anking, or living. Ankh or yoga, quote unquote, is not a practice. It's life. Anking is life. Ankh is life. So just like you don't practice life, you don't practice sitting in a posture. when you go before the abosom, if the abosom comes, you're urged to move, and you move in accordance with the energy of the moment. So it's instinctive. It's a response. It's a response to life. You're not practicing life. So that's why we say we don't practice sitting at the encombre. We go at prescribed ritual times to engage in calm spiritual communication. It's not contrived. It is instinctive, powered by the abosom and guided by the Nananoma and Samafa. And that's why we say this reality is inaccessible to the mind of the non-Afurakanu, non-Afuraitkaitnut. So, and you'll see, and we kind of sum it up on that page. In the boldest portion of the page, we say what is termed as quote-unquote yoga is nothing more than exercise and stretching, similar to the lower-level training of a gymnast or ballerina, overlaid with pseudo-spiritual dogma that teaches the misguided, that leads the misguided Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut individual to totally abandon him or herself, and thus his or her actual divinely allotted function or destiny, which we call in creation, only to cleave to white domination in all spheres of life. So we go into some more detail about that cosmologically. We say we do not practice Ankh or life. We live Ankh or life. We cannot practice yoga or yoke or Ankh. Our sahu, our spirit, is an Ankh. It is a yoke. It is not something that can be practiced. It is something that is. We show the sahu, the determinative medut or symbol with the ankh around the neck of the animal. The ankh is a yoke. So your spirit is an ankh. It is a yoke. You can't practice a yoke. You can't practice an ankh. You are an ankh. You are alive. So what are you practicing? So this is a totally different orientation. We also go after that, we go into the origin of the common meditative posture, and we show the divinity sitting in this meditative posture. We have a number of images, and we show that, and we also show the sacred baboon, the Achinevois animal totem of the ancestors and ancient Kamit, and we show that posture that you see with the sacred baboon. The ancestors and ancestors, they become an Achinevois animal totem or a vessel through whom the ancestors and ancestors can communicate and do communicate. And then we show their meditative posture, their sitting posture. And then when you see the posture of the divinities in ancient Kamit and the people in ancient Kamit, they're in the same posture of that sacred animal totem, that ancestral totem. It's an ancestral totemic posture. So we go into that. Let me see. I just want to make sure there weren't any questions in the chat. Okay, you said white shifting positions, imitating our people who are responding to their spiritual, physical shifting during spiritual meditation. Is that correct? Exactly. So if somebody walked into a room and saw me sitting in front of my shrine and they were eavesdropping, of course I would notice their energy was in the room, but say they were just eavesdropping and seeing me sit in front of the shrine for a period of time, when Nana Bena or say Nana Awusi comes forward, which is Al-Sar in ancient Kamit, but Nana Awusi comes forward at my shrine, it will cause me to shift in a different position, to receive the energy in the most optimal fashion. The person eavesdropping won't notice that I'm interacting with this divinity, whether the divinity possesses me or the divinity just simply comes forward and their aura, their kahibit, their quote-unquote magnetosphere affects mine and forces me to shift into a different position so I can fully receive that kind of energy from them. All the person will see is that I was sitting for a while, like 15 or 20 minutes, and all of a sudden I shifted into a different position, and now I'm sitting in that position for a certain amount of time. So the whites and their offspring say, okay, well, I can sit in front of a shrine and sit still and shift positions and hold the posture for 20 minutes just like they can hold the posture. It becomes a contest now. And they think that, sitting in a specific posture, maybe that has to do with aligning your spine so you can breathe deeper and you can strengthen your back. And the more you can hold yourself in a posture, the more disciplined you are, the more focused you are. And now you're stronger, just like somebody working out. The more they work out, the stronger they are. So they think that that has something to do with what we're doing. Actually, I'm communicating with the deity. When they come forward, I move. When an ancestral spirit comes forward, it causes me to shift in a different position, and I can receive, I can hear I can feel their energy better because I've changed position. Whites and their offspring were imitating the postures, but they're communicating with absolutely nothing. So they created an entire discipline based on communicating with nothing, which is insane. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's nonsense. It's no different than somebody getting a cell phone and they've never seen a cell phone before. They see me pick up a cell phone, they see me punch numbers in the cell phone, and then they see me talking and communicating and laughing and so forth. Then I take the phone and I hit the number and put it down. Then they go and pick up the phone, a piece of plastic, they punch on some numbers, and they listen and they don't hear anything. Maybe the phone they pick up doesn't have a battery, so they're not communicating with anything. They're doing the same thing I did. They put the piece of plastic to their ear and listen, but they're not communicating with something, but I made a connection, so I'm communicating with something. Well, they create a whole tradition of picking up pieces of plastic and talking to them even though nothing is responding, and laughing and joking in certain intervals, and then call that a phone call ritual. Because they saw me engaged in a phone call ritual. When I picked up a piece of plastic, I talked and laughed and then put it down. So they have a whole culture of teaching people how to pick up pieces of plastic that just don't respond and create a whole ritual called the phone call ritual. That's the same thing the whites and their offspring are doing, and they're calling it yoga. They're shifting positions, sitting in postures, they're not communicating with any divinities, not communicating with any ancestresses and ancestors, and so forth, and they call that a discipline. Now, some of them later on realize, of course, what we're doing. So when they invaded our cultures, they started to create white sculptures of the deities of ancient Kamit, trying to force us, of course, to worship fictional white characters. They did the same thing in India. No deities of the Dalit in India, the Tamil-speaking people, the Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people in India, none of the forces in nature, they deal with the same deities that we deal with in Afuraitkaitnut, because that's where they migrated from, the blacks of ancient India. Those deities are the same ones we deal with in ancient Kamit, and the same ones we deal with today by the same names all over the continent, and in America under the culture of voodoo and hoodoo and juju and so forth, in Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi and Chicago and everywhere else. We're dealing with the same forces in nature, still possessed by them, still communicate with them. They still operate through our bodies and allow us to lay hands on people and heal people. They still allow us to engage in divinatory practices that we developed right here in America and kept for hundreds of years, even though we were separate from the continent. We are dealing with the same deities. They're dealing with the same ones, the black population in India. So the whites and their offspring, of course, when they invaded, they began to try to introduce white sculptures and say these are the ancient deities and force the people to worship those. The only spirits that will take up residence in a white sculpture are the deceased criminal relatives of the white people who live there. So those wayward, criminal, deceased, drunkard, drug addict type spirits are the only spirits that they can communicate with, and they will pass that off as a communication with deities, devas and devis. They'll take corruptions of our ancient culture, wove it into Hinduism, the Upanishads, and so forth, and manufactured a pseudo-dogma, and have been running with it ever since. Okay, so, and in fact, the last part of this article, we get into briefly the chakras, and then we get into it in more detail in the next article we're going to go through, which is dealing with the chakras. So here we just hit the origin of the chakras. Chakra is typically associated with the pseudo-discipline of yoga. Again, this term is one stolen from Kamit by the whites and their offspring. So we show a couple of quotes. Chakra, also, it's derived, it will say it's derived from the Sanskrit word for wheel or turning. Chakra, kakra, kaka, and so forth. In different dialects, Eurasian languages, they go back to proto-indo-european so-called roots, and they deal with that. Now, and the quote also says the chakras correspond to vital points in the physical body, but are generally understood as being part of the subtle body, which cannot be found through autopsy. While the breath channels, meaning the nadis of yogic practices, had already been discussed in the classical Upanishads, it was not until the 8th century, Buddhist Hevajra Tantra and the Karayagiti, that hierarchies of chakras were introduced. 8th century, so-called CE or AD. And then they also mentioned the history of the word and talking about the word chakra meaning different things. A circle, used in a variety of senses, a circle of people, also to know yantras or mystic diagrams, which were circles, a nerve plexus within the body that was later used. Now, in the Buddhist literature, the Sanskrit term Chakra, in Pali, Kaka, is used in a different sense of circle, referring to a Buddhist conception of the cycle of rebirth, consisting of 6 states in which beings may be reborn and all of that. All talking about a wheel. They talk about, the Greek kuklos, circle, kuklos. In fact, the term circle in English comes from kukulos in Greek, kakalas in Lithuanian, Sokarian B, kokale, quail, which is wheel, and so forth. The cognitive chakra still exists in the Asian languages, and we mentioned all of that. They trace that back to proto-indo-european languages very recently. However, again, in ancient Kamit, you find the term kar, anything round, stab, stick, roll, or cylinder. This is an ancient term from ancient Kamit, thousands of years before the whites and their offspring even come into existence. It has nothing to do with any proto-European language family. It exists prior to that. We also show it means stone, boulders, and so forth, round, cylinder, boulders, rocks, round rocks, and so forth. Kara, variations. Also, kar means shrine, and the karut means the deities of the shrine, the kar or kara, shrine. So it's something round, cylinder, and so forth, but it also means shrine or sanctuary of a deity. And you have Abosoma deities of that shrine. So we go into that, and then we show that they're, just like you have kara, meaning something circular, kara, meaning shrine. We also needed to show, of course, kara, meaning kara from ancient, in our Khan culture, meaning the soul, divine consciousness, the root is ka. We show in the Pert Imheru, so-called Book of the Dead, the Pert Imheru. In the chapter of driving back slaughter and Hinensu, the spirit of the deceased individual says, my hair is the hair of Nu, the deity Nu. My face is the face of the deity Vara. My eyes are the eyes of Heru. My ears are the ears of Afuat. My nose is the nose of Hanit Shepsu. My lips are the lips of Anpu. My teeth are the teeth of Chakra, and it goes to the various body parts. And then at the end it says, there is no member of my body that is without an Untoro, or deity. Tahuti shields my body altogether, and I am like unto Ra every day. The parts of the body are kara, or shrines for the abosom, and the parts of the body are delineated. This is why the kara, or chakras, corrupted into chakras later, or Chakras, which is kara in ancient Kamit, are recognized to be shrines or sacred centers of energy for the deity. This is where this comes from. So, the whites and their offspring, as we said, they're incapable of activating chakras, balancing chakras, or any other associated chakras because their shrines are empty. So the shrines or the wheels of energy within their bodies are empty. Just like we can have a shrine in our house for a deity, the deity will take up residence in the shrine. We can set out a sacred seat for a divinity, the spirit will take up residence in that seat, and somebody clairvoyant can see the divinity. They can see Awusi or Asa. They can see Benna or Heru Behudet. They can see Awuku or Set. They can see Yao or Heru sitting in that sacred seat that we set out for them on the shrine. The whites and offspring can get the same shrine and sit it there, but no deity is going to take up residence there. So they can sit in front of a shrine all day long. They can pray. They can chant. They can meditate, and that shrine will be empty. And the same thing with their quote-unquote wheels of energy in their bodies. In their electromagnetic field, they're just empty wheels with no connection to any force in nature at all. So when they sit around and meditate and engage in fire breathing and sending electromagnetic energy up and down their spine, spine. All they're engaged in is, as we say, is a pseudo-metaphysical life show. All they're doing is moving electromagnetism through their bodies, and they're calling it spirituality. But their shrines are empty. When we engage in ritual practices, the shrines in our bodies are linked ritually and energetically to the shrines of the deities in nature, and we create a direct link of tumi or power to these forces in nature, and they communicate with us through these channels. It's no different than a cell phone. When you make that connection, then you can talk to somebody on the other side of the world. If you don't have a connection, you can dial that cell phone all day long, and you will never talk to anybody. When we stimulate our shrines in their bodies, they're like major cell phones in our bodies. We turn them on, and then the aboson, we connect with the aboson, we connect with the nsamafo. The whites and their offspring do not have the capacity. Their shrines are empty. They're like empty pots, literally. So we go into that information. And then, so next is the article, KASA, the origin and nature of the chakras, where we go into more detail in that. So you can pull that article up. Okay. And one question that we had in the chat room, what is the origin of the Hindu race and their religion? So the most ancient people who, of course, Afuraitkaitnut people are African, black people. We originate in Afuraitkaitnut, Africa, and we migrate to various parts of the world before any other group of people existed on Earth. So we migrate into Southern Europe, we migrate into the Levant, we migrate into Asia, migrate into the so-called Indian subcontinent. Over 60,000 years ago, those people who are called the San people today, the San Bushmen in South Afuraitkaitnut, they're the ones who migrated into India, Australia, and so forth over 60,000 years ago. Remnants of them, of course, you'll find in the Andaman Islands, south of the Indian Peninsula, and those people are still there today. They still live the same way they've been living for thousands of years. You can type, in fact, let me put that in the chat. Okay, so the Andamanese, so Andaman Islands, Andamanese people, you can Google them. You can also Google the DNA with regard to them. So when you see images of them, they are jet black people, some of the blackest people on Earth. They have full lips, full noses. They have the exact same hair that Afuraitkaitnut people have and have had for thousands of years. They do not have straight noses and straight lips and dark skin and straight hair. Straight hair is not natural to Afuraitkaitnut people, whether we're in Afuraitkaitnut or India. So the original people of India, black people, did not have straight noses, straight lips, and straight black hair. So it's no different than the average Nigerian or Ghanaian or anybody else on the continent. And the remnants of those people who had not mixed with the whites and their offspring still look exactly that way today. So when you Google Andamanese, you can Google images of them, and you will find that. You can Google the information regarding the DNA, and you'll find these are the original people of the area. The only reason you have people who, in India, who are light brown, or some of them very dark, and they have straighter noses and thinner lips and straighter hairs because the whites and their offspring invaded India. The further you go north, the lighter the people get. The straighter the hair gets, the straighter the noses get, the straighter lips get. The further you go south, the darker the people become, the more natural their noses and lips are, and the more curled their hair becomes, and to the point where it's naturally curly or coiled. Kinky is a misnomer because that's just something that the whites and their offspring use to suggest that kinks means something is messed up and you need to get the kinks out. Our hair is coiled. It's like a spring. So the same spring coiled hair that we have all over the continent, they also have that in India as well. So that's the original people. You can also look at, and when the Nation of Islam promotes that foolish, idiotic, nonsensical idea that the original black people had straight noses and thin lips and so forth, they've always promoted the worship of the fictional white god. That's who their fake god is, Master Fraud, Muhammad, and that's who they worship. Right, so the dark-skinned Hindus with straight hair, nothing more than a product of mixing. You can also look at the studies of we put it here on the website, the Edar locus, and you'll find out genetically in Southeast Asia, when did the curled hair become straight? Because of interaction, because of miscegenation. Those Edar locus studies are talking about how did the hair go from originally being coiled to later genetically becoming straightened out because of miscegenation. So those studies show that, and they show that relatively recently over the past few thousand years. But for the first tens of thousands of years of our existence in India, nobody had straight hair, nobody had straight noses, nobody had straight lips. They had dark-skinned black people with naturally coiled, spring-coiled hair, just like the Andamanese still have to this very day because they didn't mix with anybody. Okay. So, all right, so let's get into the KASA, the origin and nature of the chakra. We just proved that the term yoga, coming from yok or yunk or ionk, onk, is not only etymologically derived from ancient Kamit, but we show the cosmology of the ankh actually around the neck of the animal in the form of a yoke, because the ankh is a yonk or a yoke, not only around the animal in the term ankh, but also in the term sahu for spirit, because it's about the linking or the yoking of the spirit and the soul. We just showed that. We showed yoga is not a discipline. Yoga or yonk or ankh simply means life. And when we sit in front of shrines in a meditative posture that comes from the deities themselves in ancient Kamit, and we show them sitting in those postures, in those various postures, that goes back thousands of years before anything happening in Aryan India. We show it's not a discipline. Ankh is life. Yoga is not a practice. Life is not a practice. Postures are not, we don't sit around practicing postures. We go to the shrine because it's time to go to the shrine to communicate with the Insamafo. We go to the shrine because it's time to communicate with Yabosom. Yabosom come forward and affect us, then we respond. And if we shift positions, it's a response to the energy that we're receiving. We receive it, process it, and transmit it as well. It's a provocation of their energy, and we respond to that provocation once they transmit it. So we show yoga is not a discipline. We have a totally different orientation when we talk about ankh. Now, we don't even use the term yoga or yoke. If you're going to use any term, you use the term ankh. And if you use the term ankh and you know it means life, then you can't use it the same way it's corruption, yonk or yonka or yoka. You can't use it the same way anymore because it's totally corrupted by the way the white and offspring use it. Now, and of course in Nakan culture, for example, we still use ankhs or akua badal, akua, unkwa, and we still use them ritually as we always have. By the way, with regard to the akua badal, there are different versions of the akua badal, but it looks like an ankh. You see the breasts of the female. It's a fertility figure. It is actually Nebet Het. We have an entire article on her, Akua, the abosom of Aku, and Akua Da. If you look on the Afuraitkaitnut Bosom webpage, on our site rather, and we will put this. And by the way, when the archive of the piece is posted of the station, we'll also have these links in the description section, so you can see the specific links when you're listening to it again. And also, by the way, for those who want to continue to listen, we'll probably go a little bit into overtime tonight. The live stream cuts off in 10 minutes. It's 10:50 right now, Eastern Standard Time. 11 o'clock, the live stream will cut off. So if you want to continue to listen, you can listen in by calling in and listen on the phone after, but you have to call in before, within the next 9 minutes, because once the live stream cuts off, then online it'll be cut off, but you can still listen on the phone. The phone number to call in is 657-383-0635. 657-383-0635. You have a little bit over 9 minutes to call in so you can listen past 11 o'clock. All right. And we're just saying quickly, the Afua doll, that's Nebuchadnezzar, the wife of Set. Althar, Aset, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar are children of Geb and Nut. Geb and Nut are children of Shu and Tefnut. Shu and Tefnut are children of Atem and Asaset, Nebuchadnezzar. Atem and Asaset, Nebuchadnezzar are children of Ra and Ra'et. Ra and Ra'et are children of Nu and Nut, or Nun and Nunet. Nun and Nunet are children of Amen and Amenet. So Amenet is the great mother, Amen is the great father, and Set and Nebuchadnezzar are great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren of the great mother and great father. This Ankh, Afua doll, she is a fertility divinity. She has the breast, she has the large head. Sometimes they'll show her body straight with the breast. Sometimes they'll show actually her stomach and her hips as well. And you will see that same representation in the ancient world. Thousands of years ago, you will see the same structures or related structures of the fertility mother divinity found in Europe thousands of years ago, found in the Levant, found in Asia, found in Afuraitkaitnut. You'll find that all around the place. But this is Nebuchadnezzar. This divinity is a minor female fertility divinity in relationship to Amenet. She does not represent Amenet, the great mother. This is Nebuchadnezzar. Just like in our Khan culture, a father or mother would give a little girl the Afua doll because it represents fertility. The girl becomes of age as far as becoming a woman. They may give them a fertility doll just because they want to make sure if you're going to have a child, not only for women who are infertile and they actually have a problem, and they have a doll, sculpted for them and ritually prepared so the divinity can operate through it, and they tie it to their back and walk around with it for days or weeks until they stimulate that fertility in their womb area, not only for the people who have problems with fertility, but also for the people to make sure they don't have a problem with fertility. They want to make sure that they do gestate properly and do lactate properly when they become pregnant. So they'll give the young girl an Afua doll that she can have and keep even before she gets pregnant. So once she does, she would have been infused with that kind of energy on a regular basis so that she will always be fertile and things will be straight in her reproductive area. Sometimes even as children, naming ceremonies when the baby is born, they'll be given different things, sometimes a basket, sometimes an Afua doll. For the woman, they're given the Afua doll. For the male, like the baby's born, or even at rites of passage when the male becomes of age, he'll be given a cutlass while the female is given the doll. Now, Akua and Awuku Kwekwanansi and Akua, which is Eshu and Akberu, Set and Nebuchadnezzar, they're husband and wife, male and female energies that are balanced, connected to the planet Mercury, communicators. He's a communicator, she's a courieress. Eshua, Awuku Kwekwanansi, carries our prayers back and forth from the spirit realm to the physical realm to the spirit realm. Nebuchadnezzar carries our offerings, our ritual sacrificial offerings from us to the ancestresses and ancestors and to the Abosom, to the deity. That's why in Kamit, she wears a bowl on her head. She carries the offerings in that bowl. In Yoruba, she's called Agberu, the wife of Eshu. Agberu literally means the load bearer, talking about the bowl that she carries on her head. In our Khan culture, one of the titles of Akua, with Nebuchadnezzar, is also Kukua, which means an earthen vessel, because she carries the offerings that we give to the Abosom and Nsamafo from the physical world to the spirit realm. So just like her husband carries the messages, she carries the offerings. He's a messenger, she's a courieress. They're both carriers or couriers. He's a courier, she's a courieress. Right, so these are their functions in creation. Now, because they deal with that exchange of energy, dealing with media of exchange, one of the titles in our Khan culture, Akua Akua Fo, the Akua people, it also means fertility. It also is a term for farmland, fertile land, agricultural land. So Akua Fo is one of the people, Fo, who deals with Eku or Ekua, farmland or fertile land, that exchange, that energy that's moving through the land that enlivens everything. All right, so there's a connection between that and fertility, right? So you have Akua, fertility force, stimulating fertility in the reproductive region, stimulating, cleansing in the reproductive, areas so that she can be fertile. And then you have the male, Awuku, who facilitates communication, facilitates the free flow of energy, and that also has to do with, on Earth, facilitating the free flow of energy. If your nervous system facilitates the free flow of energy from your brain to all of the cells in your body through the nervous system, it's the World Wide Web in your body. And on Earth, Awuku or Kwekwanasi facilitates a free flow of energy, make sure there's no blockages, so there's a free flow of communication and energy from one part of the planet to the other, and within the planet as well. So that free flow of energy facilitates fertility in farmland, for example. That's why Akua, just like Awuku or Aku is the name of the divinity, and Akua is the female, Akua Po are also called farmers. It's dealing with the free flow of energy going back and forth with regard to fertility. So somebody, a young woman given a fertility doll to stimulate fertility within herself, the young male given a cutlass. He's going to have to, when we do the slash and burn farming techniques, and we cut and slash and so forth, and we prepare the land for, cultivation. If somebody dug up the Akan people's artifacts 40,000 years from now, they would see a couple of things. They would see a bunch of fertility dolls, Akuaba dolls all over the place. Of course, they would say that represents fertility, so these people were using that doll for fertility. They would also see all kinds of cutlasses. They may or may not associate that with agriculture. They wouldn't associate it with Awuku and Akua as husband and wife, the Akuapo, the facilitation of fertile energy within the land. They wouldn't know anything about that. All they know is there's a bunch of cutlasses all over the place, but there are also a bunch of fertility dolls all over the place. The fools would say that because there are a bunch of fertility dolls all over the place, these people must have worshipped the Great Mother. This represents the Great Mother, and therefore these people thousands of years ago originally only worshipped the Great Goddess, and there were no gods, and the gods came later. So the black woman is God. They will say something stupid like that. This is what happened in ancient Kamit. This is what happens with white archaeologists, and they find the quote-unquote Venus statues all over the place. All they're finding these Akuaba dolls, these ancient Akuaba dolls, fertility statues all over the place. There are cutlasses all over the place as well, but they don't associate the two. So what they'll say is, well, these people must have worshipped the fertility goddess as the Great Mother, and originally there was only the Great Mother, and there were no male deities, and the male deities came later, and they were the sons of the Great Mother. And that's pure nonsense. That's idiotic. That's foolish. That's the promotion of white lesbianism, white supremacy in the form of lesbianism, just like a white male promotes white supremacy, the insane notion of white supremacy in the form of the male-dominant patriarchal pseudo-religion. The white female wants to do the same thing. She wants kind of imbalance, and the white male who's a dissexual wants to be a female anyway, so he wants to promote white-female imbalance as well. And brainwashed Negroes jump on that and say that these sculptures represent the ancient mother goddess of the universe, and originally there was only the black female and black woman is God and all this other nonsense, so we only worship female divinities, and later the gods came. In reality, just like in our culture today, with the exact same sculpture today, the same fertility sculpture today, she's a minor divinity, a great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter of the Great Mother. These fertility statues do not represent Amenet. They only represent Akua, and the cutlasses represent the male, but they don't associate that, so they don't even see that there was a balance of male and female the whole time. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into this chakra article, download that, and we start off referencing, again, what we said in the previous article. So some of that information we already went over, talking about kara, the origin of the term, chakra, kara. So that first couple of pages we deal with that. And we quote from one of the texts that everybody who's studied the chakras, and the first major text on the chakras in the West, written in 12,927 or 1927 by C.W. Ledbetter. When he's talking about the chakras, he says the Hindu books hint at rather than explain what happens when Kundalini rises up the channel through the Sushumna. They refer to the spine as Merudanda, the rod of Meru, the central axis of creation, presumably of the body. In that they say there is a channel called Sushumna, which is in the spine. Within that, another called Vajrini, and within that again a third called Chitrini, which is as fine as a spider's thread. Inside the spine is an energy channel called Sushumna. Inside that is another channel, and inside that is an energy thread. They say as fine as a spider's thread. Upon that are threaded the chakras like knots on a bamboo rod. So this is what they're talking about with the chakras seem to represent an energy channel within the spine, and they're like knots on a bamboo rod going up the spine. The spine is the physical channel which contains the non-physical Sushumna in Hinduism. It is the central axis and thus called the rod of Meru. Meru is a deity. In reality, this is a corruption of the deity Menu, the deity Men in ancient Kamit, also called Amen Men. So we show this in our article on Amen Men, because we worship the same deity in our Khan under the name Amen Men. We show that Men's crown, which most Egyptologists never understood why he had this particular crown with the red ribbon going from the head, back of the head, down to the ground. They never understood what that meant. We show that it's actually the central nervous system. The brain in our Khan culture is called Amemini. And then you see the spine, that's the central nervous system. That's the crown of Amen Men, is actually the central nervous system whose major organ is the brain, which we call Amemini in our Khan. This is why he has that particular crown. It represents the central nervous system. It's the central axis of the body. So this central axis, which is governed by Menu, is where the Hindus get the rod of Meru, which is the rod of Menu, which is the central axis of the spine of the body. This is where they get that from. It is the crown, kara, or the crown chakra, and so forth, and we go into detail about that in the article. The notion of 7 chakras being akin to knots on a bamboo pole, stolen directly from Kamit, from the whites and their offspring. Now, key here is it must be understood that the doctrine of the chakras as plagiarized by the whites and their offspring is very recent. The first mention of chakras as psychic centers in a rudimentary form is typically stated to be found in the text called Upanishads in India. The later Upanishads, the earlier of which are composed between 2,200 years ago and 1,800 years ago, the so-called 2nd century BCE and the 2nd century CE. So only a couple of thousand years ago, the 2nd century BCE and forward, are where basic notions of chakras are first plagiarized by whites. Not 5,000 years ago, not 10,000 years ago. In the 2nd century BC is when they first began to talk about them in a rudimentary form by the whites and offspring. However, the 7 chakra system, not plagiarized and propounded by the whites until centuries later, beginning around the 6th century AD. Hold on one second. So this notion that the chakras are a 7 chakra system has been in ancient India for thousands of years. 6th century AD, 1,300 years ago, 6th century AD is when they first started talking about the 7 chakra system with regard to the whites and their offspring. Now, in fact, 1,500 years ago, 6th century AD, within the Tantra tradition, as a matter of fact. Now, let's show how we show in the article how the 7 chakra system, we already showed that kara comes directly from the term in ancient Kamit. Now we need to show that the 7 chakra system knots on a bamboo pole up the spine. The spine is like the bamboo pole, and the 7 knots along the spine of the bamboo, along the bamboo pole is like the knots upon the spine. 7 knots upon the spine. You have to have the 7 knots, and you have to have the spine. They only started talking about that in the 6th century AD. We showing Kamit. This goes back thousands of years. Now we show the term kas or KASA. It means knot. It means tie, ligature, but it also means backbone, vertebrae, and spine. The same word for knot is also the same word for vertebrae and spine in ancient Kamit. KASA, plural kasu or kasau. That's very important because you find in the text of Kamit the 7 kasau or kasau sefek, the 7 magical knots that protected a man. We show that in the piece, and then we go further. 7 magical knots that protect the individual. There's also the kasau 7 or sefek, the 7 deities who assisted at the judgment and condemnation of the wicked. Now, we're getting closer to what we're talking about. The term KASA means 7, the KASA 7, or the KASA sefek, the 7 KASA, the 7 magical knots that protect the man. Remember, the word for knots, KASA, is also the term for vertebrae and spine. So the 7 magical knots are the 7 magical knots or KASA that are on the KASA that are on the spine. This is the same as the 7 knots on a bamboo rod. Now we go further. There are other definitions of the term KASA. One is chamber or room. Sarcophagus or funerary coffer. That means the KASA knots are also chambers, rooms, coffers. They function as shrines. There are 7 shrines along the spine. KASA or Kas can also mean master or chief. The female is chieftainess. It can also mean soldiers, regiments. So the 7 KASA are masters, chiefs, energies, governors along the spine. It also means to compose a statement, arrange words in a logical sequence, a formula, a spell, an incantation, declaration, charms, and so forth. These are ritual incantations, ritual prayers, meaning the use of sound to manifest intent. The 7 KASA, the 7 knots. The word KASA means knots. These are 7 knots, and there are 7 of them. The 7 KASA or KASA sefek. Sefek meaning 7. KASA sefek meaning the 7 knots. It also means the 7 connection to the spine, because KASA means spine. It also means shrine. It also means chiefs or deities or those who arrange. It also means spells or incantation. So you have everything associated with the 7 knots of the spine, 7 knots, positions on the spine, ritual incantations, sound vibrations. This is where you get mantras associated with the 7 chakras. KASA also means regulators of divine law, lawmakers, arrangers, disposers, managers. 7 chakras or karkar manage the energy going up and down the spine. Kasi also means to lift up, to raise, to rise, to raise oneself, to lift up, an offering to a deity, and so forth. So that also means it's the source from which the notion of the serpent power rises up through the karkar, the chakras, because KASA means knots, KASA means spine, KASA means vertebrae, KASA means ritual incantation, KASA means arrangers, the divine arrangers of energy. KASA also means to lift up or to rise up, or to exalt, or to ascend. This is the serpent power ascending through the 7 knots. And then there's another term, Kasu Uru, a group of deities who raise the dead. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me get some water right quick. Okay, so we showed that this is related directly to raising consciousness, awakening, raising up certain ancestral spirits from death, dormancy, and more. All these things associated with the same term. The KASA, plural, Kasu, has 7 magical knots along the spine, governed by 7 deities. The KASA effect, the 7 KASA deities, are found in the physical body. The spinal nerve ganglia and the plexuses are seen as the physical representation of the 7 major chakras. At the following spinal anatomical locations, we show the coccyx, sacrum, lumbar, upper thoracic, and cervical, and mid and upper brain. So the nerve ganglia is a mass of, or a knot of nerve cells. The plexuses are a network of, or a knot of spinal nerves. So we show the image of the nerve ganglia of the 7 regions. Now, here's the key from the Emiru, the quote-unquote Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. A textual reference regarding the 7 Kasu, the 7 knots, also the 7 parts of the spine. The text is from chapter 771 of the Pert Emiru. It says, quote, "O you 7 knots, 7 Kasu, the arms of the balance on that night of setting, the sacred eye in order, who cut off heads, who sever necks, who take away hearts, who make a slaughter in the island of fire. I know you, I know your name. May you know me just as I know your name. If I reach you, may you reach me. If you live through me, may I live through you. May you make me to flourish with what is in your hand, the staff which is in your grasp," meaning the spine which is in your grasp. The 7 knots have the spine which is in their grasp. These are the 7 knots along the spine, or the staff, or the quote-unquote bamboo pole. These are the 7 karkar, or chakras, in the text of Kamit over 3,600 years ago. It says, "May you destine me to life annually," still talking to the 7 KASA. "May you grant me to many years of life over and above my years of life, many days over and above my days of life." And then it goes on to say, "May I rise to be a likeness of myself. May my breath be at my nose. May my eyes see in company with those who are in the horizon on that day of dooming the robber." Rising to be a likeness of myself, breath in my nose, my eyes to see in the company of those who are in the horizon. You're talking about breath, breathing, the rising of the energy so that your eyes can see illumination for those who are in the horizon, which are the ancestresses and ancestors and deities. This all has to do with the 7 knots along the bamboo pole, meaning the 7 KASA, the 7 knots along the KASA, the spine, rising up KASA to the nose through the breath because of the energy, and the eyes are illuminated so they can see spiritually. So these are the 7 spirits. KASA appeal to ritually with the elevation and recalibration of the individual spirit. Again, we say this is evidence of the 7 karkar, or the KASA system, fully incorporated in ritual thousands of years before the whites and their offspring had any knowledge of its existence. So while the whites and their offspring don't start talking about the 7 chakra system until really the 6th century A.D., 3,600 years ago, we were fully incorporated in ritual, the 7 knots upon the bamboo pole, as they mention in Hinduism, but the 7 knots upon the spine. They grasp the spine. The deities associated with these 7 knots, connected with the breath, the illumination of the eyes, and to be able to see the Abosom and Insamafo. Thousands of years ago, and that culturally and ritually incorporated in the culture. Now, this is talking about the imagery and placement and their ritual association. The origin and nature of them we deal with next in the article. We go into some detail about that, but we quote from the text of Unas, the Meru text of Unas, so-called pyramid text, over 4,400 years ago. Utterance 3:18, it says, "Unas meaning the king, the so-called Pera, Ainsu, so-called Pharaoh, Unas. It says Unas, quote, Unas is the Na snake, the leading bull, who has swallowed his 7 Aratu, meaning the 7 Uraeus cobras. And so his 7 cervical vertebrae came into being. His 7 neck vertebrae came into being, who give orders to his 7 Paschetu Enneads, which means collection of deities, who hear the words of the king. That text is saying that Unas, the great king, represented as a snake, a serpent, swallowed his 7 cobras, 7 radiant cobras in the form of radiant discs. And when he swallowed these 7 cobras, they took up residence as the 7 cervical vertebrae and came into being as his 7 cervical vertebrae. 7 radiant energy discs came into being when he took them in and swallowed them. So while the 7 kasu are the knots along the spine, the swallowing of the 7 cobras, that's the ingesting of 7 radiant discs. You see the cobras with the discs upon their head. You see the cobras take a circular form, representing the radiant energy. So the ingesting of the 7 cobras, the Aratu, or the Uraei cobras, as they are written in English, is the ingesting of 7 radiant discs, who then take up residence within the king as his 7 cervical vertebrae. This act precipitates the development of the 7 magical knots within the body. And because of this act, Unas is empowered to give orders to his 7 Paschetu, which means 7 collections of deities who regulate the Kara and Kasu. Now, we're talking about 7 sets of deities who regulate order and creation. The term Paschetu means a company of deities. There are many companies of deities. You have the 4 sons of Heru, 42 assessors of Ma'at, 8 primordial deities of the Agdawad of Kemenu, the 9 deities of Anu, different sets of divinities in ancient Kamit, and a traditional culture across the board. Each grouping is sacred, just like you have different organ systems in your body. The neuroendocrine system has a set of organs with a sacred number. The respiratory system has organs in a sacred number. That's an organ system. The circulatory system has the organ, the heart, and then the veins and everything is its own system. Every organ system has its own number of organs, and it's sacred because it carries a specific function, and it has a certain number of organs that it needs to use for that system. The renal system has the 2 kidneys. Of course, it has the bladder. That's a system. And it has its own structure and its own organs. The same thing occurs with the spiritual organ systems within the great divine body. They have their own sets of deities, meaning organs within the great divine body. But this is the 42 assessors of Ma'at, the 8 primordials of Kemenu, or so-called Hermopolis, 4 sons of Heru. In this particular text with Unas, it talks about 7 Paschetu, or 7 sets of divinities associated with the 7 cervical vertebrae deities. The important part about that, with regard to this discussion, is the term Paschetu, meaning a sacred number grouping of deities. First and foremost, it means Paschetu just means a company of deities, a group of deities. However, Pasach or Paschetu also means backbone vertebrae. It also means to shine or illuminate. And the Medusa or hieroglyphics show a serpent, shows the image of a spine or a backbone, and also shows a radiant disc, the disc of the sun. So you have here the serpent, the radiant disc, and the image of the spine. That's the serpent power, energized by the sun, solar energy moving up the spine, all contained in the same word, the Medusa, all contained in the same word, all referencing the energy of the divinities that come into being when the king swallows the 7 serpents that become his 7 cervical vertebrae. Again, this goes back to the 7 kara, the 7 chakra system fully incorporated within ritual in ancient Kamit over 4,400 years ago. Thousands of years before you see anything with the whites and before the whites and offspring are even in India, and even by the time they get there, it takes them thousands of years later to begin to repeat some of this information that we already had in Kamit thousands of years ago. This is linguistically as well as cosmologically. And we go into, of course, the great detail in the article. In the latter part of the article, we also show that KASA is also related to Chakra, which means to order, to arrange, to command. There are 7 KASA divinities, and they're called the KASA Sefek, the 7 divine masters of wisdom who helped Tahuti, the god of wisdom, to plan the universe. Their names are Neferhat, Neferkehui, Nef Esheru, Ka, Bak, Kek, and San. These 7 Chasu or Chasu are manifest as the 7 Kasu. Thus, in relation to the text in the Pert Imheru regarding the 7 Kasu quoted above, we also have in the coffin text, so we quoted the Pert Imheru, so-called Book of Coming Forth by Day, misnomer as the Book of the Dead. We also quoted from the text of Una, the pyramid text, 4,400 years old, and now we can quote from the coffin text dealing with these same 7 Kasu being referred to the 7 Kasu, the 7 knots, 7 deities of the goddess Me'ort, the great cow goddess in the sky. The quote from the coffin text is as follows: O you 7 knots or Kasu of Me'ort, the goddess Me'ort, may you make me fresh, may you make me live, may you give me strength to my bones and life to my limbs. May you make my flesh fresh completely with life. I know you. I know your name. I have not died. I have not grown poor. I have not gone blind. I have not become deaf. I am one of the deities. I know your names. Coffin text number 407. So here you have the 7 Chasu, the 7 divine helpers of the divine divinity of wisdom. Tahuti, he is the husband of Me'ort. And then in this text of Me'ort, you have the 7 Kasu, the 7 knots of wisdom along the spine, the 7 Kasu, the 7 shrines, the 7 knots, the 7 energies along the spine, incorporated in the coffin text, incorporated in the pyramid text, incorporated in the Pert Imheru, in the rituals of Kamit, thousands of years ago, thousands of years prior to anything taking place in India. So we go into a great deal of detail in both of those articles showing etymologically and cosmologically the origin of these terms, karkar, chakra, or kakra, as well as ANKH, which becomes ayank, or yonk, or yuk, or yoke, and so forth. One of the keys, and let me see if anybody has any questions right quick in the chat. Hold on one second. Okay. And if there are no questions on the phone line, all right. So we just wanted to say it's important that when individuals are teaching, quote-unquote, yoga, they're trying to incorporate things in ancient Kamit. Some of them will say, all of them, as a matter of fact, will say the term yoga comes from a Sanskrit term, which is yug and so forth. They'll also say that chakra comes from the Sanskrit language, kakra meaning wheel. Some of these people in our community, now of course the whites and offspring are going to misinform our people. But then you also have black people in the community who claim to be spiritualists, who manufacture little groups, Kemetic religious groups. All of the Kemetic religious groups that exist are something that somebody made up here in America or made up in the Caribbean or whatever. There's nothing wrong with making up groups, but people shouldn't pretend like they didn't make them up. They shouldn't pretend like it was an ancient lineage that they came from with regard to the group that they've set up here. We do have an ancient lineage. The people of ancient Kamit, Nubian Kamit, we migrated to West Central South Afuraitkaitnut. Some of us were taken from there and brought to the Western Hemisphere during the enslavement period. We continue to practice our culture, including our language and ritual practices, and the exact same deities from ancient Kamit and Kanet. It still manifests in the Yoruba tradition, Akan tradition, Bakongo tradition, Fula tradition, pre-Islam, and even the ones who don't practice Islam and practice traditional ways. All the various cultures on the continent, this is the ancient culture. And then when some of us who are, and the language. So we deal with the same deities, the same derivative language, same ritual practices, the same culture. These are not different cultures. These are all expressions of the same culture. The same deities that possessed us in Kamit still possess us today, and communicate with us today, and still speak through these various dialects today. This is why you could take an Akan dictionary, Yoruba dictionary, various other dictionaries, and compare them with a hieroglyphic dictionary and find the same words and concepts with the same meanings and multi-tiered meanings, spiritual meaning, as well as straight, mundane meaning, all intact, because it's the same culture. And when we brought that culture during enslavement, we continued it in Haiti with Vodou, and in Cuba with the Yoruba tradition, and different in the Congo tradition, and in South America with candomblé and things like that. Also in North America, New Orleans voodoo in the southern United States, hoodoo, which is an Akan tradition in the United States, juju in the United States, Gullah Geechee traditions in the United States. So we continue this same ancient culture, still possessed by the same divinities that we've inherited through our blood circle here. So these are the traditional, authentic culture. We could still deal with these traditions. You have some people who will create a quote-unquote Kemetic tradition. And by the way, ik is a European linguistic device. It doesn't exist in the language of ancient Kemet. So that's why you won't see us using the term Kemet in our writings, because it's not actually proper. So what you'll find is no different than saying something's Kemetish. Just like somebody says something is brown, they'll say it's brownish. Green or greenish. If you said something is related to Kemet and you said it's Kemetish, people in ancient Kemet didn't use the term Kemetish. Adding ish at the end of Kemet is using a European linguistic device. Using a European linguistic device to refer to something and adding it on to an ancient language. So we don't use Kemetic because they didn't use that as well. If you want to use that adjective, you would use Kemeti or Kanati and so forth. But people who have created little priesthoods and priestesses and so forth, and if they try to claim this is an ancient tradition that was underground and then they unearthed it later, and there's only a sacred tradition going back to ancient Kemet that was underground, a priesthood in Nubia somewhere, and the only way you can get to it is you have to come through them and get initiated and all of that. People are manufacturing things. Inaccurate, but they're manufacturing things. There's nothing wrong with to create a culture or recreate a culture or connect with your ancestresses and ancestors and reestablish something that comes from your blood circle. There's nothing wrong with that. But when people start making up nonsense and pretending like they have some information that other people don't have, and in reality they don't really have it, then that becomes a problem. So you have people who have created groups and talk about ancient, Kemetic traditions, but then they start talking about like they have some sacred line to a priesthood that was underground for 1,000 years and it just reappeared just now in America, and they're the heads of it. So, but then people start talking about, at the same time, they talk about yoga and they'll say, well, the practices came from ancient Kemet and things like that because they have an idea that we were doing something and some thoughts and postures. Of course, we know we're doing something, but at the same time, they have some high-level, super high priesthood, but they're telling you at the same time that the term yoga comes from Sanskrit. At the same time, they're telling you the term chakra comes from Sanskrit. And they're basically imitating everything that's done by the Hindus, the white Hindus in India, and just blackening up what the white Hindus are doing and saying it's all black anyway. If yoga would have led to enlightenment, if their meditations would have led to enlightenment, if it would have allowed them to realign with their Chakra, with their soul, their divine consciousness, you have to ask the question, why don't they know? Why didn't their third eye show them that the term ANKH is the term yoga, and that's where the term yoga comes from? Why didn't their third eye show them that the term Chakra can be found in the Medutu of ancient Kamit as kara, and the actual 7 structure, 7 knots and so forth existed in Kamit prior to the Indo-European nonsense? Why are they imitating the misinformation coming from the Indo-Aryans with regard to chakras and the philosophy associated with chakras as put forward by the Indo-Aryans that's inaccurate? Why don't they know about all of this information in the coffin text, in the pyramid text, in the Imheru, talking about the 7 knots? How come they haven't mentioned the 7 knots, or mentioned the karkar, or mentioned ANKH, and showing the actual medut, showing that the ANKH is around the neck of the animal in the word ANKH in the form of a yoke? Why didn't they show that? Because they don't know what they're talking about. They're manufacturing things, some out of ignorance, some deliberately trying to manufacture things to manipulate people, pretending they have a connection to the ancient deities, which they don't have, pretending they have a connection to the illuminated ancestresses and ancestors, which they either do not have or they simply have neglected because they're still controlled by the whites and their offspring. But yet, they would like to charge you a great deal of money, make you go through all kinds of initiations, all kinds of ceremonies, all kinds of control and pseudo-hierarchies to make you believe that you're entering into the quote-unquote Kemetic tradition, when in reality, you're not. You want to enter the quote-unquote Kemetic tradition or the Kamiti tradition, Kaniti tradition, the ancient Nubia Akan or ancient Kemet tradition, Nubia tradition, the ancient Kemeti tradition, Kanati tradition. Embrace your ancestresses and ancestors, your blood relatives. You incarnated into the world with Abosom that came into the world with you, assigned to you by Amenet and Amen. You come into the world with your ancestresses and ancestors assigned to you. So when you have that, then you have the culture. You have access to ancestral communication. You have access to ancestral and deity worship, ancestral deity possession, divination. You have a full culture that you are born with. All you have to do is restore it. You have a language that's connected to West Afurakai, Central, and back to ancient Afurakai. It's unbroken. That's part of our ancestry. We are born into a culture. It comes into us via reincarnation. You don't have to manufacture something and then use the whites and their offspring as a gloss, pretend like you have a culture, and then blacken up the information of the whites and their offspring and pretend like that's the ancient culture. What ends up happening is people begin to study and find out these individuals don't know what they're talking about. So if somebody's been teaching for 20 or 30 years, on one hand, there's some kind of high priest or high priestess. But on the other hand, they've also been telling you that the term yoga that they teach comes from Sanskrit, or chakra comes from Sanskrit. That means somehow they didn't even have the basic alignment with their own ka and kaet, which would have told them, no, that's not accurate. Don't say that. Don't teach that. Even children and adults were not necessarily highly spiritually cultivated. If they just have a basic alignment with their ka, if they're about to say something inaccurate, about to teach something inaccurate, they'll have a strong urge to not say it. Their ka will stop them from saying it. They'll feel very uncomfortable if they try to say it, and they'll just say, well, I was going to say something, but no, I'm not going to say that because I'm not sure about it. Later on, when they investigate, they'll be directed to detailed information about why their ka directed them not to say it. But just a basic alignment with the ka. You don't have to be spiritually masterful. Just a fundamental spiritual integrity will allow you to be in alignment with your cross to the extent that if you were to say, about to repeat, hey, the term ANKH term yoga actually is a Sanskrit term. Before you could even finish it, thinking it, your ka would say, no, don't teach somebody that. You have a strong urge to stop speaking, saying, well, I was about to say something, but I'm not sure about it because I feel a certain way about it. I'm not going to say anything until I do some more investigation. That's for an average person who doesn't do any ritual practice, a basic alignment with the ka. So people who claim to have some high spiritual knowledge, and they're constantly teaching people for decades, very often, at least for years, misinformation about the Chakras, the Chakras, misinformation about the term yoga, what it means, where it comes from, and what it actually means with regard to the life of the person. You can understand now that they have no clue. They're not aligned with their ka at all. So the money they've been charging, the pseudo-hierarchies that they've built around themselves, it's pure nonsense. They have no clue. So we need to embrace our own culture from our blood circles, and we can restore this information. Now that this information is out, some people, you'll be able to, share this information, and people will be able to correct the misinformation they've been receiving for years and the false orientation with regard to the information, the interpretation of what does it mean. You have a totally different interpretation of what ANKH or yoga means now. It has nothing to do with some discipline of practicing postures. It has to do literally with life. ANKH, life, anking, lifing, and getting in harmony with your kradi, abosuman, and samafa, your ka, ntoru, the deities, and the akutu, the ancestral spirit. This is what it's dealing with. Okay, we have one call, and then we're going to end it. Okay, Ichimo, you have a question or a comment? 6560.
Yes, I have a question. When you're speaking of the deities, were they in human and flesh form, or is it just an expression, of nature? Like when you say Tahuti and the other deities that you name, were they actually, living human and flesh, blood people that transcended, or when you speak of the deities, is it an expression?
Okay, that's a very good question. This is the thing. Human beings are human beings. Deities are deities. Animals are animals. Plants are plants, and so forth. So just like you have a spirit that animates your physical body, the animals, lions and lionesses and cubs have spirits that animate their physical bodies. Plant life lives and dies. It has spirits that animate their physical bodies. Mineral life lives and dies, and so forth. The forces in nature, like the sun, the moon, the earth mother, these are physical bodies, but they are major spiritual powers that animate and enliven these major powers in creation, as well as the black substance of space, as well as the major divinities operate through that dark energy, dark matter, which is a plasma. These are the deities. These are the forces in nature. They have, just like you have a kayat, a spiritual brain, and you have a specific function to execute in creation, the deities also have a kayat, and they have a specific function to execute in creation. The idea that the deities were originally human beings, and then they became ascended masters or spiritually, elevated, and later became deities, and people began to worship them as deities, is totally inaccurate. It comes from two things. It comes from the whites and their offspring trying to promote the idea that there's no such thing as deities because they have no access to that. So they don't want us to have access to the actual forces in nature that animate the sun. The energy that makes the sun vibrant is a force in nature we can communicate with that possesses us through ritual. The same thing with the Earth Mother, the same thing with the rivers, oceans, and so forth. They don't want us to access anything more powerful than them. They want us to believe that there are no powers in creation and also that we need to worship them. So this is why they promoted Christianity, Islam, and so forth, and it took them thousands of years to get this nonsense into the heads of a small percentage of our people. This is why they promote that for political reasons. There's also, but also I just want to say, in our traditional cultures, there is a such thing as you have people who spiritually are cultivated, right? So they're living and become elders and eldresses within the culture. Like, for example, in our Khan culture, you achieve the office of Nana when you demonstrate through, thought, word, and deed, your thoughts, intentions, and actions that you've lived in harmony with divine order. You've aligned your spirit with your soul consistently, and your thoughts are a reflection of divine order, and your actions are a reflection of divine order. So when you make your transition, just like you were a real elder is here, when you make your transition, you become an honored elder or honored elderess in the ancestral realm, and the power that you have is increased, and you have increased responsibility. So we evoke some ancestresses and ancestors to help with, infertility, because they have extra power to help assist us because they live in harmony with order. Their functioning is very similar to certain divinities. So people will be like, they'll say, well, they are like the divinities now because they have increased power. They can help with infertility. They can help with an illness. They can send some energy and help us overcome an illness, to help us do this, to help us do that. So people will appeal to the ancestresses and ancestors. And there's a term in English where they'll say the ancestor or ancestress was deified, so they're a deified ancestor or ancestress. That's English thought. They're trying to approximate what happens in our culture culturally, and since there's no such thing in white culture, they don't have any terms for it, so the best thing they can say is deified ancestor or deified ancestor. But the human beings don't become deities. At most, they have increased power. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So over in Egypt, where you see like pictures of Amun-Ra or Tahuti, what does that actually represent? If they were never go ahead. I'm sorry. Right.
So what will happen is they are forces in nature, just like we are. You're a force in nature. You're a spirit that animates your body. When a human being dies, the spirit will separate from the body. But at this point, your spirit is animating your body. One of the major shrines for Tahuti, for example, is the Ya, or the moon. He's a spirit that operates through, uses that force, that physical body to transmit his energy. So he's a spirit animating that physical body just like your spirit animates your body. And just like you can communicate with a lion, you're not communicating with the body of the lion, you're communicating with the spirit that's operating through the body. Or you have a dog or a cat, when you teach the dog or the cat and you communicate with the dog and the cat, you're communicating with the spirit of that animal. It's the same thing with the force of nature. They will take up, their spirits will take up residence in a river, will take up residence in a mountain, will take up residence in the sun or residence in the earth, but they are spirits that we communicate with. Sometimes when they possess and teach us things, or they show themselves clairvoyantly in a spirit, they will show themselves in the body or the form of an Afurakanu male or an Afuraitkaitnut female. Sometimes they will take the form of an animal, like Ra will take the form of a hawk. Or, Heteru will take the form of the sacred animal totem, the cow. So they have sacred animal totems in the animal sphere. They have sacred plants that are sacred to them. Sometimes somebody will dream about a river divinity. The river deity won't show up. All they'll do is take the person's spirit to their river, and they know that's the deity that's trying to communicate with them. Sometimes they'll take the form of the shrine in nature. Sometimes they'll take the form of the specific animal totem that they have. So you see a big black bull in your dream, you knew that was a certain deity. Or sometimes they will take the human form, which is actually a deity form, but they'll take the human form and they'll show up and somebody say, I saw this big black man. He had a cutlass in his hand and he was showing me how to fight. And I knew that was Ogun. I knew that was Heru Behudet. I knew that was Benna in the ANKH tradition because they will take that form. The forms that they first manifested to us outside of their natural forms and shrines in nature, whenever they manifested in the human form, and of course it was always in the Afurakanu male, Afuraitkaitnut female, or African male or female form. They would never manifest as a Chinese, European and all that, because those are perverse forms. So they would never manifest that way to us, and they would never manifest to non-black people, period, in any fashion. So they will manifest in that form if they want to communicate with us in that form. Sometimes they'll manifest in their sacred animal form. So that's why you see the animals all over ancient Kamit, but not just Kamit. All across the continent, you'll see there are animals that are sacred to ancestral clans and to deities, and that's because they utilize those physical forms to transmit their energy.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, Mirase.
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to end the broadcast right here. What we want to do is tomorrow, as we always have, we have our show, Egua, which is Marketplace. We always have one of our people, somebody from the community who engages what talks about their product or service that they provide to our community, their business, their organization that serves the community, supports the community in a positive fashion, whatever kind of business they have, but also shares our ancestral values at the same time. And we will be sending out the notice of the individual who's going to be on. We most likely it will be, well, we just won't say, we're going to say tomorrow, check our website. Tomorrow we will be sending out information on our Blog Talk page, blogtalkradio.com/ODWIRA. And also we'll be sending it out on Facebook and the NING site. Mirase again for checking us out. We also, again, if you go to our website, we do have the soft cover versions of 7 of our books available. The Nhoma page on the website, our books only range from $8 to $11. Soft cover, we print them ourselves in color on our own printers. When you make a purchase, you can either make a purchase or even if you want to make a donation, you do that as well, because although we have 7 of our books in soft cover, we actually have 12 books total, and then we have over 60 articles, about 49 videos, and a number of audio tracks and so forth dealing with this information. All of our books and articles in the PDF versions, the e-books, we have made all of those available for free, so people can download all of our books for free. But for those who want soft cover versions of those same books, we do sell them between $8 and $11. So if you want to make a donation that will assist us in the work that we do presentations in different cities. We were just in Hartford, Connecticut a couple of days ago. We'll be in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks. We're raising money for that event right now. So if you'd like to make a donation because you read some of the soft cover the PDF books and you appreciate the information, you can make a donation at our website on the Nhoma page. If you want to purchase soft cover books, that will also help us with our expenses. Whenever we do presentations in different cities, number one, we don't charge a speaker's fee. We also do not charge a fee for people to attend our events. We always make them free. And we also give a free copy of one of our soft cover books to everybody who attends, because we want to get the information out to our people. The only way we can do that is when we get assistance from the community, from people who have studied the work, appreciate the work, see the value in it, maybe have downloaded the free books or whatever, or order the soft cover versions. You can do that at ODWIRAFO.com, ODWIRAFO.com, ODWIRAF as in free, O.com, /Nhoma, NHOMA.html. That's the Nhoma or publications page. And you can get to it from a number of different pages on the site. You can order there. You can make a donation there. You can also, we also have a program where if you want to be a distributor of soft cover versions, working for yourself, of course, you can purchase the books from us wholesale, and then you can sell them retail and generate extra income for yourself, as well as, get at the same time you're providing people with accurate information about the culture. Looks like we have one more call, and then that'll be that. So, Ikiamo, 8044, you had a question or a comment?
No, just listening.
Okay. All right, Midase. So, we appreciate everybody for listening. Come back tomorrow, same time, 9 p.m. On Egua Marketplace to hear our guests talking about their products and services for the Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut community. And again, Midase, we will be updating you on our upcoming events. We will be planning some events in other cities. If you would like for us to come to your city to present, just hit us up on our website, odwira.com. Go to the Contact Us section, ODWIRA, S as in free, O.com, and we can make that happen. Again, Yedase, we thank you, and we will be back tomorrow. That's that.